this to the live chat once it becomes available. Oh, we have to wait a moment, apparently. Sometimes takes a second for stuff to actually start hitting and doing its thing. Looks like my sound set all right, though. I could actually open up a proper Hangout a little bit. For the moment, I'm kind of messing around, but after the problem I had not too long ago in streaming, I got to test this to make sure it's functional. That, and I don't know, at this hour of the day, I don't know how successful we'll be at getting any viewers of this darn thing, but I don't know if that's even the point. Let's see now. Is it receiving the data yet, or no, or I don't know, man. Give it a couple more seconds, see if it actually starts working here. Come on, let's refresh this and take a look. Do we have vague functionality yet? It's still showing on offline. That's kind of what it did yesterday, too. Took a while before it actually popped up. I don't know what's going on with this. Starting to wonder if there's a problem with the old stream key from this. I might have to refresh and make a new one. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, still showing offline. That's the right channel this time. Unlike last night, that was a pain in the neck. I screwed up and started broadcasting on the 13 Heathens channel by mistake. That was an interesting little adventure. Oh, wait, something happened on the screen. Does that mean it's about to actually start registering? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Come on, refresh, take another look. It doesn't seem to be. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Huh. Well, give it a couple more seconds. I don't know what the hell's going on. This thing's been a big pain in the neck. It's funny, after I got that strike for quote-unquote spamming the other day, it's just kind of been a nuisance. So I get to sit here talking to myself mindlessly, wasting time. Come on, man, what the hell's going on here? It's the right goddamn key, should be. Says I'm broadcasting the Shadow Heathen. The correct one's checked. I know I entered in the data right. Hell, this thing's not showing itself as online. Did it fuck up and put my strike back? Let's double check that shit at this point. I don't know why the hell it's still showing offline. Let's take a look. Let's see. Let's open up the channel and a new tab. No, community guidelines are clear still. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Maybe I'm just not patient enough. I don't know. Hell, maybe it's taking longer to connect than it used to. I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'd be horrified to take the thing off and put it back online after an unsuccessful attempt at this point. Oh, it's showing one viewer. I guess I'm technically on. Let's try that. Let's refresh, see if it's showing anything yet. Nope, still not on my end. However, it's showing a viewer. Something weird's going on here. Huh, I don't know. It says I'm broadcasting. Oh, Google, 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 why hast thou forsaken me? Yeah, I'm not convinced this is actually doing anything. Well, double check to make sure I'm looking at the right stream. There might be... Oh, there is too. That's why there's a second... Yeah, it's because it's not on default. Damn it, I've been up here for a couple of seconds and I didn't even realize it. Stream status is okay. Okay, let me check this. There we go. Book talk and other bullshit. There we go. We actually have the right chat area here. Granted, I can't directly talk to the chat while I'm in this interface. And let's bounce back to the other window here, because I do not know what the fuck I'm doing today. It happens. Actually, I just got out of a really long conversation with somebody, and I don't know. I don't think I'm that mentally tired, though. But I got a comment a little while ago that I want to kind of joke around a little bit about. It's not like I want to pick on somebody for criticizing. The hell with that. This is just going to be me kind of babbling a little bit, most likely, but I'll get to that in a second. Let's see now. There was something in specific that I was going to kind of address. I think address is kind of the wrong way to put it, even quite honestly. But it brought a few things to mind in terms of the whole notion of writing and I guess the process when it comes to things like marketing and trying to promote your crap. One of the weirdest questions in some regards is you sit there and you spend all kinds of time working on something And then lo and behold, somebody comes and says, what is it about? And it sounds like such an easy question. And a lot of the time, what you're dealing with is, a lot of time is an easy answer. It's like, well, gee whiz, you're writing a book. What is it about? Now, my usual canned response is the main character. It's a exploration of the Freudian, sorry, not the Freudian, rather the Jungian notion of the shadow aspect of the self, that proverbial inner darkness that we all have. We need to learn to confront and either to accept it as being part of ourselves and embrace it, or find a way to fight against those more primal instincts, we'll just say. And well, that on some levels is the core of what it's about. It doesn't even really begin to address it. I actually had a really neat comment earlier from Amaranth, who's I've seen a lot in comments and has been around for quite some time, and I found myself kind of nodding and agreeing with it on a lot of levels. When you're initially trying to go out there and not only market a book, but even just trying to pitch it, whether it be agents or book companies or what have you, there has to be kind of a familiar element to it because they want to compare it to, on some levels, with things that are already out there. And this is one of the big things when you're going out there and pitching it to agents and whatnot, is what they refer to as the comps, the comparison, saying, is, well, it's like this in this regard or this in that regard. And this leads to a lot of language that's generally rolled into that is actually almost intended to hit a chord so that it sounds vaguely familiar to whoever is reading it. And a lot of times these come across as sounding recycled and tropey and what have you. And it's, I don't know, it's just kind of the way this shit works. It's a big old pain in the butt. But, it's part of the game. It's something that you almost have to do when you're trying to market a book. Now, in terms of my particular work, I mean, there's 40,000 years of prehistory that go into this. There were years of me, in terms of literal history. There were years when I was running the role-playing games, years that I was working on this. And a lot of this goes back really into the 80s when I was initially running role-playing games for my friends, and that's kind of the conduit that I use for my stories. Now, when I was pretty young, I had written a couple of things that, at the time I thought they were great. I was in high school. I thought that I was going to be the next great thing and what have you. And I wrote up this story that I thought at the time was great. And I submitted to a couple of periodicals, your fantasy presses. I actually think it was more so the horror thing because I was writing horror stories back then. That was my initial genre before I kind of decided, and well, I guess I kind of landed where I am with the kind of stuff I'm working on now, that whole fantasy sci-fi hybrid. I like that. For me, that's kind of a comfortable zone to be in, and that's mostly what the role-playing games were back when I was running them. But back when I was in like high school and what have you, I fancy myself. I want to be a writer, and since like age 12, I think is the first. Around about age 12 was when there's the first documented incident of me saying that I wanted to be an author when I grew up. And I don't know, it's a weird goal when you think about it, because on a lot of levels, that even then wasn't really what I wanted. I'd fallen in love at a young age with the notion of these traveling storytellers, whether it be village to village if you go back far enough, or even city to city later on. And this is an art that was dying. These people would have their collection of stories, and they'd be invited to varied events or what have you, and would sit down and just tell stories, sometimes held just on the street, for passerbys or what have you. And that kind of concept is what I fell in love with as a kid. And I picked this up from my granddad because he had been a firefighter at one point in his life. And I know I've told this story a million times by now, but he'd sit there and he'd be telling these elaborate stories, a lot of embellishing. But when I was a kid, I just sit there and listen to the stories, and lo and behold, one day my grandmother comes pounding on the door and storms into the room and says to my grandfather, says, Davy, tell the boy the truth. But I didn't want the truth. I wanted the embellishment. I wanted the retelling with all the flourish and the romanticization of it. I wanted all of that. And I don't know, it kind of became a weird motto that I've kind of taught my kids as I've gotten older, that, if you're going to tell a story and you're going to embellish a little bit, it doesn't necessarily count as a lie. But always remember the truth. So if they say, okay, what really happened? So you can tell them that as well. But in terms of telling a story and tailoring it a little bit to an audience, there's something about that as a skill. whether you're a writer or a politician or just a salesman, that there's a point at which embellishment can be a really neat tool. Now, if you're deliberately deceiving somebody to try to sell them something, that's kind of where the problem comes in. But it's funny because I love the storytelling aspect. I love sitting there and spinning tales, but at the same point, I hate salesmanship, generally speaking. The whole thing of marketing and trying to promote yourself, I hate it. I'm frankly probably not that good at it if I were to actually have to admit that. But at the same point, there was a comment made earlier by Amaranth that I absolutely loved. Let me grab that up here. Let me grab the right fucking. I'll just grab it as it is. Here we go. Screen cap. There we go. We'll grab this. Whoops. Screen capture. Smart select. And I will grab this. This was a comment made on last night's Hangout, and honestly, I couldn't fucking agree with it more. Oh, damn it, it's a little bit too small. Let me move this up here. Not that there's anyone talking in the chat anyway. Hello, one viewer. Let's make this bigger. I actually, honestly speaking, couldn't fucking agree with this shit more. Because I think it's a fucking great comment, because there's a number of points here. One of which being, of course, that so many authors lodge their heads up their own asses. And I have to absolutely agree with that. And part of that, I'd actually say, in a lot of cases, most of that is overcompensating. I know I fucking do it, to say the least. Because I look at my work and I don't think, look how brilliant it is, or what have you. I'm writing the next great American novel, and I'm going to sell 1 million. Nah, fuck that. I wrote a story. Yes, I published it as a book, but ultimately, I decided that I wanted to share a story with some folks. That's ultimately what I wanted. And I hope people enjoy it. And with me, that's what it is, I don't want to try and present this image of me being the most creative or insightful or unique person in the world with this. There are certainly notions that people have seen before, and I did actually borrow from several other sources. It happens. It's not a big deal. The point is, can you make a story that's fun to read? And in my case, that was just it. I just wanted to entertain people and get them to enjoy the story. But in terms of the trope thing, when I got to that part of the comment, I don't know. There's something inside of me that almost wanted to rebel. And yeah, there are some things that are a little bit tropey that are thrown in there. I'll take that. There always will be. But the thing that really occurred to me is there's a point at which, while I was working on this, because I worked on it for over 10 years, that I actually started wondering if this whole nonsense of the collective subconscious, which is also a Jungian idea, if there might also be something to that. And part of the reason why that came to mind is because, as I said, I've been working on this for 10 years. Hell, the scaffolding that this is built on is role-playing games that I ran in the mid-'80s. Well, mostly mid-'80s, mid to late '80s. Might have ran a couple after that, including one that I ran online. But, incidentally, anyone who watches this later, seeing as you only have one viewer now, I do actually plan on restarting running the game sometime probably in October. After I get things squared away. I'm still working out what I'm going to do for a plot line for that one. It's not going to just be straight revisiting the 12th tribe thing that we did last time. But there might be some elements of that thrown back in. I might want to revisit the planet that we had in that particular story arc. And that's how I see the role-playing games. They're story arcs. They're just stories that I tell that people can participate in. And that's kind of why I like role-playing games, the tabletop ones at least. But yeah, in terms of like tropes and this kind of stuff, having worked on it for years, I started noticing that ideas that I'd thrown into it years ago started becoming more common and more mainstream. And that almost makes me wonder if there might be something to this whole notion of the collective subconscious. One example, and one of the smaller ones technically, is there was a character that I had named ages ago back roundabout, I don't think it was roundabout probably 80, somewhere between 83 and 86. I think it was probably around 84, 85. And I named this character Ravenhawk for a lot of the characters that I was throwing into the role-playing game back when I was running it during that time period. This was what I refer to as being the first stage, which would be basically the first rule set when I was working on the role-playing game. I now reference it as first stage, but of course at the time it didn't make much sense to spell out that, and I certainly didn't. One of my characters I named Ravenhawk. And Ravenhawk was, he at that time was kind of the good guy. He was the catalyst. He worked for all the major factions in one form or another. And he was that character clad in black, going around. And the black was in part because it was just the kind of armor it was. It was this substance that at the time was called cordonite tritanium, which has since been renamed to tritanium because honestly, because the tritanium was just harder for me to keep typing out over and over. But yeah, the abbreviation for it is CTT, which is actually iterated normally as CPI, which trying to put it in that format was kind of miserable and my editor hated it, so I think we ended up going back to CTT. I'd have to double check the book to make sure. Yeah, I've got a book, yeah, I'm babbling about that crap again, Nim. But in any case, so I named this character Ravenhawk, and this was, as I said, somewhere in and around 85. Then, lo and behold, 10 years later, around about 95, this craptastic movie comes out with the title Ravenhawk. And I'm sitting there, and I'd already been working on the book for a number of years at this point. I started on this sometime in the 90s. I mean, the first technical copyright thing I put on it was 97. And that at that point, there was enough of done on it that if anyone got their hands on it, I want to make sure my fucking name was slathered all over the damn thing because writers are paranoid like that. But yeah, that was a much earlier edition. And so this craptastic movie comes out. They're using the same name, and I'm thinking, fuck, somebody might see the name of this character in the book and think that somehow it's a callback to this fucking shitty-ass movie, which naturally it wasn't. The movie hadn't been out when I first named the character. However, somebody seeing the book, if I were to keep that name, wouldn't know this. So when I was going back through it, because of that, I'm like, okay, fuck it, I'm going to have to do something with this character. I'll just give them another freaking name. I mean, there's no connection, but some idiot might try to make that connection. Or, yeah, I don't know, some movie buff, technically, because it's, like I said, it's some craptastic movie that apparently nobody'd heard of anyway. But nonetheless, so then I had to come up with a secondary name for we'll call the Ravenhawk clone that's the main antagonist, or one of the main antagonists. So he's since been somewhat renamed to Rukahar, although he is still commonly referred to here and there as being Ravenhawk clones when you're talking about the ones that aren't the true Rukahar. And even the true Rukahar isn't. I, more often than not, now will actually rename them as Raven clones or Ravenhawk clones, number this, that, or the other. So it's, you'll have the clones numbered based upon what alliance they're actually working with. Because in the original role-playing game, that was kind of his thing, is that there was a Ravenhawk for every faction. And he was actually in service to the Jani, who essentially was one of the forces behind running the universe. And he used these clones as agents to try and keep things going. Now, this wasn't an army of them. There were, I think, 12 or 13, one for each faction. Actually, no, there were 12 at the time. The 13th is Raven 1, the supposed rebirth of Rukahar, the original. Now, the reason why there were all these clones wasn't because he was so great at this, that, or the other. It was a punishment because he'd let his ambition get the better of him and tried fucking over all of his allies. So they essentially took away his free will, took away a lot of his agency, his ambition, and what have you, and put him in a position of having to serve loyally as his eternal punishment for what was really a fairly finite crime. And this, even in the initial storyline, was something that had gone on for like damn near 100,000 years, I think, probably the first time that I actually came up with the notion. So that's that character. Another character that I came up, and this one came up fairly early. There was a race that was lycanthrope, not lycanthrope, lycanthrope, but they were essentially the same damn thing. It was a little bit of a lack of creativity, I acknowledge with that. But when you look at the notion of naming rights and this and that, you have a shapeshifter that has a secondary form, one bestial, well, bestial loosely put, and one of them human. So if you were to discover them, and it was going to be one of the humanoid races that discovered them first, and you already have a legend of things like were creatures, It made sense that that would be the name they'd end up applying to the race after discovering them. In any case, one of the players was playing a Lycan, and I think that her shifter form, because it's not necessarily like just some fuzzy animal. It could be anything, and I think in her case it was like, I don't know, I want to say Komodo dragon or something along that line was her shifter form. And we were going to be introducing this new character that was an assassin that was supposed to be arriving at the starport. And he was also, of course, going to be the same race. These two characters are supposed to be somehow related. This is part of how we were introducing the new character. And he comes off the shuttle after landing, and she goes to greet him. And I have my character sheet for this character in front of me, and I have a name written down there. And she goes, Shavar! And I'm like, okay, hang on, how do you spell that? And I erased the character's name, have no idea what it was, and wrote in and had her give me the spelling. It's Shavar, actually taken from Shiva, like sitting Shiva, is where she initially came up with it. So later over the course of the game, I'm sitting there, and you have this character going around, and he's in his human form, and it comes to that scene that I've been waiting for where he's going to be going into a shifter form, and have to pick some kind of animal. And that particular morning, I'd had a problem in the garage, and I'd had to go in there with a broom to chase out a mama raccoon who was deciding that she was going to move into the garage. So when I picked the animal for the shifter form, I ended up with what essentially was kind of like a were-raccoon. And I went with, of course, with the raccoons that were common in the area. Now, where I live now, they tend to be more gray. But at the time, up in the Northeast, they were brown raccoons. Your good old-fashioned pudgy little bandits with the black around the eyes, yada, yada, yada. The more common view of raccoons. So Shavar became my little were-raccoon kind of thing going on there. And he was a character that I think roundabout, I want to say 87-ish was probably when I first came up with him. It might have been a little bit earlier. It was the mid-'80s anyway, around it. So, I mean, all these numbers have to be circa because I don't freaking remember, but I'm thinking probably around about 86-ish is when I first came up with Shavar. But he was a staple for a long time. A little bit shorter than your average human because, if you're going to have your big bad tropey assassin that's the best assassin there is, you have to do something to kind of not only simply make them different, but also to acknowledge the kind of joke of it all. So I made him a kind of short raccoonoid assassin by that point, when he was in his shifter form at least. And then, lo and behold, a couple of years ago, out comes Guardians of the Galaxy, and you have this little this little raccoon running around that's this anthropomorphized raccoon. I'm like, well, fuck. Do I go back into the book and change the goddamn character just because somebody else has done basically the same shit I did when I was a kid? Yeah, I don't know. What I ended up doing, though, is going back in there and changing things a little bit, and I basically mutilated the character a little bit. Now, he had been attacked in a prior campaign in the role-playing world and had been badly injured. So I ended up giving him cybernetic implants to draw it a little bit further away from what people would assume I use as an influence. I didn't. But at the same point, people see these kind of things, and well, you're just copying this. Well, I can't accuse them of copying me. I never fucking printed the thing. These are role-playing games I ran back in the mid-'80s. Mid to late 80s, actually. Now, if I were to look up the origins, I believe that their characters around about the same age as mine, maybe a little bit older. I don't know. I haven't actually checked properly, but somebody did tell me it's about the same age, but who cares? It's not like originality is the key to everything. Most of the alien races that I use are ones that are A, easy to describe, and B, more easy for people to picture. So you take things that are more familiar as opposed to making more fantastical ones, which can be done, but then you have to spend, a lot more time explaining, and it takes a little bit more effort for the reader to kind of keep in their head what the things look like. So having it look like, a caninoid or a hawkoid or what have you. Something that has hawk-like features and more morphologically resembles like a dog or a hawk or what have you is much easier for people to picture in their head than going through this long description like I did with one particular species that, yeah, rash ray are really complicated. But at the same point, well, that might make more of an impression you don't want to sit there and have to get so in depth that, and there's a certain level that you have to reintroduce varied species or concepts or what have you with every subsequent book to a greater or lesser degree, just so you don't potentially lose new readers. This whole thing of, making them read every freaking book, I don't agree with that. Now, a lot of series kind of fall prey to that, but I just do a little bit of re-explaining. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But this is the thing is, at times, I feel like I'm at the center of the freaking collective consciousness because I'll start writing about something, and next thing I know, I'll know that either the idea already existed without me even knowing it, or somebody else uses the same name or the same concept or what have you, and this is kind of the downside of spending, 10 plus years working on something. I mean, I say over 10 years. I'm not sure when I technically started the writing of it. I think it was sometime in the early 90s. I just know that the first little copyright logo I slapped on it was around about 97. But I think if I were to look back in former iterations of my hard drive, I think it technically might have been like 91. I don't know. Maybe as far back as 89. But that was kind of the thing is, and you're technically not supposed to do this with some of the earlier drafts. I did actually update the copyright as it went on. Now it's not a formal copyright. It's just a little C on a page with a number next to it. But yeah, it was a long time coming. And some of the things that I was working on at the time, they're virtually unheard of. And now they're damn near tropes. Now I could sit there and say, well, I was working on this before they were, or I could say, obviously it wasn't as original a concept as I thought. And frankly, that's probably the case. I mean, the main character in this, yes, there was a problem. There was an incident at a cloning facility. Well, more or less everything went right. The problem is that the AI that runs the cloning facility, okay, it's not entirely an AI. It has biological components. But the AI, more or less, that runs the facility doesn't like being there and feels like it's being imprisoned. So every once in a while, it will fuck with shit because it hates everyone basically that oversees the facility. So it was more of that than, just like something went wrong. It was the facilities, the heart of the facility, the machine, or mostly machine at the heart of it, just fucking shit up deliberately to screw with people. Oh, there we go. And that's been more and more used as time's gone on over these years. Now, it wasn't even an overly original concept at the time. It was just something I liked, the idea of having, this sentient computer that just likes to kind of, let's just say it has a bad sense of humor. Think of it almost like a trickster god in terms of its motives. So there's that, yeah. The main character has essentially two souls within her, and the two of them are in conflict, and this is how I decided to express this notion of the shadow aspect. Well, a couple of years ago, this game came out, which was a Twin Soul or Split Soul or something like that, and very different conceptually, or at least very different in execution. But I'm looking at this going, God damn it, I was doing that shit in my book, and now it's going to be considered less original because this is a thing out there now. Now, on some levels, this goes all the way back to what, like, the 50s, I guess. There's a Man with Two Heads or something like that. There was this movie ages ago, old horror flick, where, where this guy died and they took his head and put it on somebody else's body, and they're going around with two heads. And so, I mean, a similar kind of concept was that with the two wills being in conflict with each other. These are hardly new concepts. A lot of it's a matter of the implementation of it. But yeah, the comment that I got earlier from Amaranth, and this is kind of what inspired this a little bit, completely fucking dead on relevant in a lot of regards, because there are a lot of things that are now tropes. And every year there are more and more things that become tropes. But trying to write up your blurb, you're sitting there writing something, trying to connect it to potential readers so it sounds familiar enough. And I don't know, they seem to think that I overdid. Maybe I did. Maybe I don't. I don't know. I try to take on board what people say. Now, the biggest issue, though, is that what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's clearly not what I'm doing right now. What I'm supposed to be doing is sitting here with all kinds of confidence and saying that it's this great book and everyone should read it and yada, 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 and it's the greatest piece of literature ever written, and it's all horseshit, man. Yes, I hired an editor. Yes, I hired a professional artist. This is what you do. This is what you should fucking do. You should not release something without having a proper fucking professional editor looking the goddamn thing over. I don't care how good you think you are at it. Have somebody with fresh eyes that's a fucking pro go through it and make sure it's done right if you care about it. If you don't really give a shit about it, then, do whatever the fuck you want. But if you care about the project, you need to take the steps to make sure it's fucking done right. I mean, there's so much crap out there, especially now with ebooks. Now, on some levels, I like it because if you really believe in what you're doing or what have you, and it's something that's not overly marketable, you can say, screw it, I'm going to publish. And it's a lot easier than going through the long process and writing stuff specifically for the publishing companies because, frankly, the first time around when I approached one was told that I should write pulp for 10 to 20 years. Well, sorry, I think they said, yeah, I think it was at least 20 years was the number, I don't know. But they told me to write pulp for a while to build an audience. And then once I have that audience, then I can write what I want. But my thought is, okay, so I build an audience writing stuff that I don't want to write, that I really have no interest in writing, and then I shift over to stuff I want to write. Wouldn't I be somewhat portraying the expectations of that audience? In some ways, like I'm portraying the expectations of my audience on here by spending so much damn time babbling about the fucking book when I was initially on here talking about much different stuff. I don't know, man. But yeah, I have no illusions that my stuff is the greatest stuff out there, although I'm supposed to present it that way. I just hope it's an enjoyable story that people like. I mean, it simply comes down to that. Do I have doubts about it? Fuck yeah. I'm not supposed to allow those to come out when I'm talking about the damn thing. Because unfortunately, that's the way it is. You have to sit there and portray all this confidence. Humility, as an author, you're not supposed to do that. But the thought that I had, and this in part, like I said, when I was reading this comment, let me just grab it up there for one more second, seeing as I've been babbling for a little bit of a while here. Screen cap, smart select. I will grab the sucker back up here, because this was kind of my inspiration here. There we go. Let's grab it. There we go. Make that big enough so it's fucking visible. I hope you all can read that to some degree. I'm not sure what my resolution's at. But yeah, this comment, too many authors lodge their heads up their own asses. I mean, that sucks. I get it. Now, when I'm talking about the book, I get super fucking enthusiastic sometimes, regardless of what I'm talking about, because you just get into this headspace. And frankly, I'm really lucky in that my wife likes listening to me about it, but I fully expect to be driving everyone completely insane with it after a point. Because there's a point at which you start like living and breathing this shit. And talking about anything else is difficult because you have to keep your mind so hyper focused on it. There we go. There we go. Where was it? Yeah. Where did it go? Yeah, but that whole thing with like writers lodging their heads up their asses is completely true. Because part of it is that you have to convince yourself that it's worth reading. You have to convince yourself that the story's good, that it's worth it to people. And, well, I will sit here and try and encourage you to go out and buy it, and I'll throw my little wares at, let me click there. And I will passively, aggressively go around like a pain, making sure that this little banner is below me pretty much wherever I go. Do I believe in the book? I go back and read it over at times, and I'm surprised that it's good. It shocks myself sometimes. It's like, wow, this is actually pretty good. I wrote this kind of thing. But that's just it. I mean, I'm my own worst critic. Most writers are, and we have to put on this weird front and try to pretend that we have more confidence than we do. Because there's always this intense level of doubt that's usually just lying right under the surface. And it's a real easy thing to trigger when you're dealing with people that write. Just the self-doubt, and you'll get these almost sometimes vitriolic responses to any vague critique. I like not being that guy. I'll tell you that much. But at the same point, there is a certain instinct of, wait a minute. It's not that, and this one, my first instinct was, there's not that many fucking tropes, are there? So I went and took a look, and I don't know that there's so many tropes in that opening, in my little blurb on Amazon or not, how many of them are technically tropes. But I certainly use the almost stereotypical language that everyone seems to use will pitch in a book. It's that same kind of let's throw all these little hooks out there to see which ones catch. And that's just it. It's just a fucking collection of hooks. And at the same point, I think about the contents of it. That proverbial question of what's your book about? And at times I want to say a lot, and it's complicated. I mean, my way of writing isn't even entirely linear. What I tend to do is I let the story kind of meander and go the way it wants to. Now, with the different iterations as this has gone through over the years, I did what I could to work back in some sections that were from former editions, and of course reworked them to fit as well as I could. But there was a good amount of that. There were scenes that, under normal circumstances, would have ended up on the cutting room floor. I found a way to work some of them back into it. I kind of enjoyed that. But is it the greatest thing in the world? No, I don't want it to be. I want it to be digestible. I want it to be for, I just want people to enjoy it. I want it to be for more eyes. I didn't write this, top tier grade level. I wrote this at, I think it was like 7th or 8th grade level once you go through and you run it through the spell checker. I wasn't trying to write the greatest fucking thing ever written. I was trying to write an enjoyable story. And I hope I have. But, unfortunately, part of that is going out and being an obnoxious twit and promoting the crap out of it. Trying to get eyes on it, hoping people will like it enough that they'll actually recommend it to a friend and there'll be some word of mouth involved there. Hoping that I get enough to pay the costs that I need to get the author's copies that I'm going to need to send to potential reviewers and try and vet them and go through all that and pay some money to these people that market books on Twitter probably to do a campaign that way. I just want people to read the fucking thing. I want people to enjoy it. And sometimes that's all there is, man. But any questions? Because, if I could go back and change some things, I probably would. But that's the problem. If I were to do that, I'd never stop changing those things. About 3 years ago, one of the first people that I ever let read the entire story, woman by the name of Cindy Sixkiller. She was like an honorary mother to me. She was great. Well, about 3 years ago, she passed. She enjoyed the book. Had a different ending then. Very different book in a lot of regards. She never got to see the final product. She never got to see it put into print. I've always kind of regretted that. Hell, my parents died, both of them, died over the course of the last few years. They never saw me published either. Not as much of an impact there. I was never that close with my mother. I was close with my dad, though. Him being the old English major and what have you, it would have been nice if he got to see it. Wasn't in time. Wasn't quite done being edited at that point, not book 2 at least. And I finished it. And got the editing done. And then I held on to it. Like I said, I would have loved if my father got to see it. I'm really upset that Cindy didn't get to. Probably would have been one of my first 2 reviews. Other one would have been Jade. I talked with her ages ago. I actually passed her a copy so she could take a look at it, an earlier edition of it, much earlier. And she kept losing it on her goddamn hard drive. I started taking it personally after a while, but, Jade is Jade. But she wanted to be the first person to leave a review for it. That was her thing. That never happened. After it was completely done, all the I's dotted, T's crossed, all the commas checked, it was done. For that matter, by that point, this was, about 3 months before Jade passed. I'd finally gotten with the artist and got the cover art done. And I could have published it at any time. I'd already said to hell with it with the agents because I was getting nothing but form letters there. No critique, no what about this makes it so that you're not interested in shopping it around to the publishing companies. None of that. I have no fucking clue to this day. didn't get a straight answer. I've learned since that I clearly don't speak agent, or at least don't pitch in the way that they like. I don't know, man. So it was ready. For about 3 fucking months, it was ready. And I was just holding on to it. Because in the back of my head, I'm like, should I go with this? Is this really it? Am I really done? Or should I just say to hell with it and go back to square one and rewrite the whole goddamn thing, even though it's completed the editing process and everything else? Because that instinct to just say fuck it and rewrite's always going to be there. And then Jade died. Well, there goes that guaranteed first review. I don't know. There goes one of the people that I really wanted to be able to share it with when it did come out. Hell, I probably would have sent her a fucking copy myself. Where's Jade? And as not to cheapen the dedication in book one, I made a point of not mentioning it, although there's enough people that have gotten it now that the information's out there. Because I dedicated it to both Jade and Cindy. Two people that have been remarkable women in my life, important to me, and that I've lost both. In part because I didn't want to get off my ass and, pony up the money to actually get it edited, because initially I wasn't sure that I wanted to actually print the damn thing. I wanted to share the story. I was just afraid. Because you're always going to have that, is it good enough? Will people really like it? You always have that rumbling through the back of your head. Well, in the forefront, you're supposed to be sitting there talking about how great it is, how wonderful it is, how you're sure everyone will enjoy it. Because that arrogance is the promotion you need to get people rallied, to get people interested in it, to get people talking about it. No. I'll take a look at them at a catastrophic. No, at least I'll try to. But yeah, I don't know. Then again, I've made some sales so far, and I keep looking out there, it's like, I've sold X number of copies. I've heard back from one reader, and they really did enjoy it, and yay, that's fucking kicks ass, because, like I said, that's the fucking point, is you write something, you want people to enjoy it. And yeah, some people will, some people won't. Not everything's for everyone's taste, and you should, on some levels, accept that. Let's see if I can find this. I'm always terrible at finding shit on G+. Let me take a look. There we go. Okay. I'm at the point with that I'm starting to just get frustrated. Yeah, I see your comment here. The problem is that in terms of how people do conjugations, for example, with doesn't, there's a letter missing there, and that's why the apostrophe goes here. Don't, can't, etc. It's because that's where the letter is missing. Now, in the case of the book, it's shadow is within, shadow is without. It's actually grammatically correct in its usage. But shadow is within and shadow is without just doesn't really work. But I've had like 5 or 6 people thinking that it's meant as a possessive, which it's actually not. And I'm probably going to end up having to go and just rename the entire goddamn thing at this point. Because it's not shadow within. It's not shadow without. It's the shadow is within and the shadow is without. But putting the is in there just sounds like crap. I don't know, man. But it seems like a lot of people are looking at it and assuming that it's, yeah, that, I don't know, because it's not multiple shadows. And yeah, it's, yeah, I've heard this enough that people are looking at it and assuming that it's some kind of grammar mistake or typo or what have you. And that might be bugging people. I don't fucking know, man. I'm just frustrated with it anyway. But yeah, it's the apostrophe is actually supposed to be there, catastrophic. But yeah, there's enough people that have come back to me with that. then I'm going to probably have to go back in and deliberately fuck up the name just so people don't think that I fucked up the name. If you follow? All right, does that make sense to you? Anyway, but yeah, it's kind of it's a weird situation. That and Shadows Within is the name of about 80,000 fucking books on Amazon as well. So anyway, I don't know. I'll give that some consideration. I'm probably going to have, like I said, I'm probably going to have to do it wrong for the sake of people thinking I did it right. I don't know if this makes sense to anyone. But yeah, I've had like 3 or 4 people assume that I was using a possessive, and I'm not. Anyway, it's important to be able to take criticism, whether I sit there and look at it and going, okay, but that's not what I was going for. But if that's the assumption that too many damn people are making, then yeah, that's a problem. I'm gonna have to address it anyway. Because you want the eyes on it, and people are looking at it assuming that your fucking title is hell. People are going to do that anyway with that particular book, and this is why I switched to the that to begin with, is because the original title people were looking at and either A, assuming that it was supposed to be about Norse mythology and that I was misspelling Midgard, which it's not referencing Norse mythology, and it's not that Midgard. It's a planet that was in the middle that was anyway. Ah, I hate titling shit, man. I tell you. We'll see. I don't know. Especially this fucking late date. I'm gonna retitle the whole goddamn thing. I don't know, man. What the fuck was I talking about? Got so sidetracked with that. Actually, in a hangout the other day, Kazoom asked me the exact same thing. He's like, "By the way, the apostrophe S, was that intentional? Because that looks wrong. That's grammatically wrong, isn't it?" I'm like, and I had to go through the whole thing with that. But somebody just clicks on the page to say, "Okay, what's this?" and am I interested in it? Isn't going to be able to turn to the author and ask them immediately. Now, are they? And whether I like it or not, I have to take that into consideration. The problem is, and this is a huge fucking pain in the ass, is even if you just make a change along those lines, it means that I have to re-upload the whole fucking thing, which takes it down for a while, and then it has to repost, and that can take up to 72 hours, which is a little bit of a nuisance, frankly. But yeah, I'm gonna have to give that some thought, apparently. There's an old expression. If one person says something to you, feel free to ignore it. If 2 people say something to you, you should probably start considering it. But if 3 people say something, you should probably take them serious because it's probably true. Now, in this case, well, as I said, it's not meant to be as possessive. If people are looking at it and assuming that, which I guess is only a natural assumption, then I should probably consider changing it. I'm just going to have to decide what I'm going to change it to. Which will be interesting because then we'll have to do another printing with a different title. I don't know. Well, I'll give it some thought. I'll talk with my wife about it when she gets back from her thing. She's doing a fun run this weekend, actually. Oh, that reminds me, actually, when I think of it. Seeing as I've completely lost track of what the hell I was talking about. Let's go to Skype and put out a Hangout link if I can get the right screen back up here. Where the hell did I put it? Nope, that's not it. That's something else. I think that's it. Yep, there we go. Yoink, pull that the hell over here. There we go. What's this? What the hell part of the screen is that? Yeah, I'll deal with that later. Get that off the fucking screen. Now, let's grab my link. I'll pass it around a couple places and open up the Hangout. Because I think I'm probably done for the moment, at least with prattling with myself. I'm sitting here on some levels having this quasi-pity party complaining about, how fake I have to be with pretending to be like uber fucking confident when honestly I never have been when it comes to this shit. But in the meantime, knock that up there. Let's throw it in the war room for the hell of it, because why the fuck not? And unfortunately, the first time around, this thing never gives me the right ding. So let's see. You can see a drunk bear, so I'll just put it in there. That's good enough. The thing is, the point is to make sure that Jordy gets it as well. And I'll throw it in, I guess, drag chat or someplace. Let me give this a second here. Nope, that's not it. Where is it? There it is. Let's go to drags or little drag chat thing above here. Oops, there we go. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, and that was the thing. It was inspired a little bit by Amaranth, but I really find his little commentary to be completely accurate and how far up their asses writers tend to be. But my defense of it, I guess, is that we kind of have to be. Otherwise, we fucking will never publish anything because we have to try to convince ourselves that, I don't know, maybe you have to consider it's better than it is, or maybe I just have to convince each other it's worth reading. It's hard to kind of say which. But yeah, it has to be the best thing from sliced bread when you go out there and start talking about it with folks. It's a little obnoxious, but you know, it's what it is. See if I even get anyone in here at this hour. Let's go to what's the other one? I'm blanking. This is not helping. Crap. I'll find it this way. There we go. Moderate seaward. There we go. We'll post it in here too. If I can get there. Plus, come on, plus Google Home. Let's see now. There we go. Communities. Communities. Come on, communities. There we go. Okay. Now that I have found out what the hell I'm looking at here, let's post it in moderate C. Popcorn. Okay. Yeah. Popcorn. Do not say that around me. That's a bad word. It's a racial slur, damn it. Post it to... I probably in the wrong fucking area, but fuck it. It's up there. I don't know. I think I just screwed that up. Oh, well. Anyway, let's see if we get anyone to join in. Oh, and I should probably technically respond directly to his comments because I don't know if Catastropic's still out there listening in the chat or not. He might have bounced off. Let me open up another window for that. I have about lost my cotton picking mind here, haven't I? Nope. Close out of that. On air wasting time. Yeah, that's about the point. Where was it? Found it a second ago. Damn it. Oh, Google, you are a pain in the back. You are the bane of my existence. Just saying. Yeah, I really loved how, I stopped a stream the other day and started right back up. And after starting right back up a couple seconds later, I ended up getting this lovely little freaking ding on my account and lost my ability to stream for over a week until they actually bothered to look into it. There we go. Let me reply to that. There we go. I think that was I made a comment and then I wandered off. I don't know. Yeah. There we go. Oops. Yeah, screw it. Good enough. I'm messing with my spelling on Google Comments right now. But yeah, it's a thing. Anyway, I am getting. Let's see, I opened it up. I put the link out there for some folks. Hopefully, I get somebody in here. I'd hate to have to sit here and just keep squawking and get folks out there. Hmm. Oh well. Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe I'll just take this offline. I don't know. I kind of went off the rails. There was more I was going to say, but I don't remember what the hell it was anymore. I kind of lost my groove there. Because that's honestly the whole thing with me using the apostrophe to basically denote that it is has been mentioned enough that I've been deliberating whether I need to go through all the hassle involved in changing it for, I don't know, I think a couple weeks now, honestly. I'm not sure how long, but I've been deliberating it for a little bit of a while because it seems to be causing some confusion. And that was kind of the last nail in the coffin of the original title. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. Whether I'm going to just retitle it or what, because if I just get rid of the apostrophe, then it's wrong because there's not multiple shadows. Nah, I don't know, man. This is what I get for trying to actually, man, fuck it. Anyway, screw it. I will sit here and chill for a couple more minutes, and if nobody pops in, I'll just have to do something else to see if I can be vaguely entertaining. Do that a couple minutes. I mean, I've tried not to be too obnoxious with marketing the book. I appreciate Nim sitting there. You have a book? Because yeah, I've been all over the goddamn place with trying to promote this fucking thing, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately, just as time goes on. But it drives me a little nuts that I'm kind of put in the position to begin with. I was kind of hoping that we'd get people to get it and like it, and maybe word of mouth, and I wouldn't have to go around making a nuisance of myself. And at this point, I'm starting to feel like that's what I'm doing, honestly. Not that I necessarily have a choice in the matter to a certain degree, but I try not to be too obnoxious typically. This is kind of what the first hangout I've done that's just straight up kind of talking about it. I don't know that it's necessarily process or what have you, but that faux confidence you have to carry yourself with. It's like when you're doing sales of any sort, you have to, whether you believe in a product or not, you have to kind of carry yourself with this air. Hey, um, thanks, Christy. Not sure who you are, but welcome and thank you. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, the books are out there. I probably am going to have to go in and figure out something about changing the title or what have you, because that damn apostrophe is causing way too much confusion. Yeah, I can stream again. Actually, I'm not sure when they gave me my ability to stream back because after, what was it, about a week and a half ago when they decided to take away my ability to stream and put a strike against my account for having a computer crash and then trying to restart a stream with the same name. I put in, I filed my little grievance with that, and I never heard back. They never told me if what I suspected was the case was actually the circumstance or not. Instead, what they did was, without telling me, they took the strike off my channel, so they never even notified me that I could start streaming again. I figured out it was some course of it was like over the course of a 3-day period, they randomly put it back up without telling anyone. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, I'd have to actually change it to is. The problem is that people are looking at it and assuming it's possessive, which it's not. And they're like, oh, there's a grammatical error on the cover. It's no, no. I don't know, man. They're thinking it's within belonging to shadow and without belonging to shadow. And if you're assuming that it's possessive, which I don't think is an unreasonable assumption that it's going to cause problems. Yeah, that's the thing is they're assuming that it's a possessive, and based upon it, that assumption, they think that it's just some grammatical fuck up that it should be shadows plural or something like that, and that I screwed it up. And I've had now 3 people make that observation that that was what they presumed from looking at it. And at that point, it's like, okay, maybe I should consider technically making it wrong by getting rid of the apostrophe. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, oh, Modric, there's a link if you want to come in because I'm just sitting here spinning my fucking wheels, man. I got a little sidetracked and stopped my rant about how much of a pain in the ass it is having to put on all this faux confidence, and hell, how frustrating it is realizing that sometimes the only thing I have to fucking talk about is the goddamn books. Link work? Or did I fuck that up? I might have. I don't know. Oh hell, you have it on like 3 different media anyway, but it should be unlocked right now. I clicked the little, which that corner I think it is. I don't know. I'd have to actually put that window up proper. Maybe I should do that. Not getting my ring-a-ling. Ah, it hasn't even launched Chrome yet. You pain in the butt. But yeah, I actually had a set of titles in mind for the series. It was going to be Shadows Within, Shadows Without, Shadows Ascend, and Shadows Fell. Then the funny thing is that Shadows Fell is going to be another one that I'm quite sure there are going to be people that are like, that's wrong, that isn't right, because I'm not talking like Shadows Falling, but fell in terms of like felling a tree. So, more like this is the destruction aspect. Hey, you're echoey. How's it going, man?
I have to turn it down. I know there was an echo.
Yeah, let me get a screen region going. Screen cap. It's going to be a slow fucking day. I can already fucking tell. I put it in cogito and all that shit, I think. So hopefully we'll get a couple people popping in. There we go. Let me grab. That's good enough. Chunk of screen. Yay. Okay. Pop that down here for now. Oh, we have massive beard cam. Yay. I did not mean that, but okay. You'll see it on the stream in a second. It's just like, beard, bottom screen. Scary red beard. Ah. That's how you've been doing, man.
I am muted. That's how I'm doing.
Yes, that is definitely an issue.
Yeah, well, the beard's the best part. The only part worth seeing anyway, but pretty good.
Yeah, fair enough.
It wasn't in Cogito, or Cogito, however you want to pronounce it, but I dropped it in there.
Oh, cool. Okay. I thought I'd put it in. Well, okay. I didn't put it in the Discord. I think I put it in the Skype group, though.
Oh, my bad. Then I'll delete that when I get back inside.
No, don't worry about it. Fuck it. Leave it in both. Never know where somebody's going to look. I actually tried dropping in Drag's little group, too, but nothing so far from there either.
Yeah. Finally updated Firefox yesterday for the first time in about 6 years. And all of my problems with HTML5 causing the browser to freeze up are gone. It's working perfectly, but now having Chrome and Firefox open at the same time is apparently evil.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. I think they're kind of evil to begin with, but I don't know. I throw on evil so casually these days.
Yeah.
There we go. Pop that up there. There we go. Open up that. And that'll do for now. Hopefully I'll end up having to add another bar when we get some more people actually show up. That'd be kind of nice. Because at least it's not as bad as last night. Last night I had hella insomnia until just stupid in the morning. I think it was like 6 by the time I had finally had wound down enough I could even try to go to sleep. And my brain was almost completely shot by then. I didn't quite start, literally babbling. But it was at the point that I'm like, okay, if I'm up much longer, my speech is going to just become completely garbled.
Nobody in Cogito were one of the ones that tried to correct your grammar on that title, are they?
Kazoom was one that did mention it.
Okay,
And
next time I see him, I'm going to have to ask him how his within is doing.
that's kind of fun. But I mean, this is the thing: is it's the thing is after Kazoom mentioned it, I then had somebody else ask me, is that a grammar error or is that supposed to be there? And I had to explain it. And today, I just a few minutes ago had another one. And at that point, it's like, okay, when enough people come to you making the same, jumping to the same conclusion, and yeah, I get it. I will consider changing it. But being that then they'll be sitting there wondering why it's shadows plural when there aren't plural shadows. So it's yeah, I'm screwed either way.
Yeah, I think the Shadow Within might be the only like alternative title you could have for it.
Well, I don't know. The problem is that if you put the Z in there, then there's, I think, because I actually did a quick search on the EPUB Amazon shit, and I think there was somewhere in the vicinity of 20 books with that same title.
I'm not surprised.
And that's part of why the apostrophe is there, because that way I can say it's the one with the apostrophe. If somebody were to ask me, but online, you don't need that because you just put up a fucking link. How's the database coming?
Haven't really made much progress on it. I worked on the character sheet up to Nax and Kinetics I haven't done yet, and over the past like 3 days I've done nothing.
I actually should probably generate a new NAC table anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if I might want to just go ahead and make an API script for the Nax and Kinetics, because as it stands now, I can make the table how you had it in the old one, but you only had one table of NAC abilities in the entire character sheet in the old one, and even that alone was about 1,000 to 1,500 lines that you copied from, that I would have to copy to all 8 race tabs.
No! Do not go with the original. The original is just the original is the author notes version. We'll just say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing, like what I'm saying is, the thing is if I were to put all the different NACs in there and make it so you could select which NAC you have and it show only that table, that's easy to do. But that's 1,500 lines is per NAC, per character, or per race, per character sheet.
Oh Christ, yeah.
So that would be a crap ton. So I might possibly be able to make an API script that pulls it from somewhere else. I just haven't looked into that yet. And then it would only be like 50 lines per race instead.
Is that what you've been talking with the Roll20 dev about?
Yes.
Okay, there's like 2 more responses that I noticed. I didn't click on the thing because it cleared it out last time I tried that.
Oh, no, that was for I got that working a different way. I haven't even looked back at the thread again yet.
Oh, okay.
But what that was is, if you look at the IP address link I sent you. Well, no, I actually updated on the Roll20 as well. For the NAC, I think what I will have is just one single roll button that you use with a select box, and I was trying to get the roll button to work with the select box, and I had to do a workaround for that.
Okay. Yeah, I actually glanced at it. I'm like, I'm not sure what they're talking about. I'm just going to let them know there's something there.
Yep. Yeah, I got it working, though. It's all good there.
Yeah, I really have to get off my butt and start, trying to see if I can get a proper, get more people involved with the startup of the game in October.
Yep.
I've gotten a couple people reference some interest in it, but I haven't gotten them actually trying to contact me about it on Discord, which was kind of the point. I had to go through and double check my settings, and as far as I can tell, I can be contacted by anyone on list or not. But I don't know. I might have to just have to do it through G Plus in terms of getting people over there through that. Just sitting there, getting them to contact me there, and then bouncing in. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's our default with Gary. I'm going to just grab that up here. That was the thing. So, when I first discovered Roll20, I absolutely fell in love with it. Add source, screen cap. Let's just grab this shit. Oh, if I can. There we go. Screen cap. Okay. Smart select. There we go. Let's grab this shit.
So let's make it.
There we go.
Agility 20. I don't know. Can only go to 9. So what I was figuring out was this little select box here to choose which your NAC skill, which stat it uses, because some of them use reflex, some of them use intelligence and that kind of thing. So, like, if I go to agility here and then hit roll, it'll actually roll from agility with target number 18 there. But if I choose int and hit roll, target number 6, and it'll roll separately.
Are we still doing with like half stat quarter? Actually, are we bothering with half stat? I don't think quarter we need to bother with.
I don't know of any place that uses quarter stat at all, except for the. No, even the.
No, that's like an
Even the health doesn't
extreme.
use it
That's
now.
like an
Yeah.
extreme skill check, and by that point, you're trying to roll so fucking low. I might as well just assume it to be that it requires a crit. I mean, shit.
Yeah. But all the stats are calculating right from the rolls. The movements is in there and calculating right. I went ahead and put Gary into the Paladins of the Ark, which is a non-profit for retarded people.
Oh, okay. Do they provide helper seals for those in need?
Something like that.
Okay.
Let's see. The Ark mental handicap. For people with intellectual and development disabilities is what it is.
Oh, dude, at this point, I tell you though, as much as I poke fun at him at this point with how bad my hands are, I could use a fucking helper seal myself. Christ.
But what is?
Yeah, unfortunately, Annie's not been too helpful with assistance I was trying to see if she would be willing to provide with the typing. So
yeah.
That ended up being a offer that fell through. I think it's still fucking huge. At least it hasn't hit that 9,000 lines of the original fucking character sheet. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's got 8 different tabs, and right now it's only 462 lines instead of, like you said, 10, 20,000.
The original one, once it hit like 9,000, for a while there was taking forever to load. Luckily, they've optimized their software, so it's not as bad now as it had been.
Yeah. But right here, this knack tables abilities go here. That's right here. I can throw in the tables, but I can throw in 1,500 lines per knack and then copy all 1,500 times however many knacks there are. I don't even remember off the top of my head right now. And then copy that all 8 times down here. I don't think I want to do it that way.
Now, strictly speaking, there's shit tons of abilities. There's only... Okay, there's what? Technically, there is the body of the mind, magic of the mind, magic attack, the standard magic of the elements, magic of the body. There's 5 base, and the lore and dark force are usually omitted when I do it. Hell, that and cyberpathy we're actually going to throw in, so there's that too.
Yeah, and then doing a table of non-knack skills that is just general reference would be fine. But
yeah.
Of course, right now for skills, we're just doing. You add stuff in.
Well, I don't know, the way that I did the skills with the original one that you have to actually enter in what stat it's based on seemed to be working fine with the original sheet.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think I need to add a roll button to each of these now that I know how to use the select buttons for them. But yeah, equipment's working fine, and I changed equipment a little bit. So instead of having all the headers over and over, it's going to be a blank line on top. I got that working. So that saves a little bit of space. And
yeah, it's funny because even when I wasn't using Roll20 to run the game, I still periodically had to use it to help me figure out how I'm going to handle certain scenes. And the next one that's coming up is going to be a fucking nightmare, dude.
Yeah.
I've been using the Storytime one as my storyboard.
This is supposed to be Gary, so where's my brown?
Right click, go to the gears.
There, now it's Gary.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, you had to throw a log in. That's so Nodvik. That's so Nodvik. I guess that sums it up nicely. Yeah, so many goddamn projects all at once, too.
Yeah. When it comes to the CSS, I have in the actual stuff, let's move this so I can see it there. There we go. I do have it all commented out and everything over here, but comment blocks, they have to be 1 line per comment block inside of here, or it messes stuff up, so I just delete them before I copy it over.
Oh, that explains some things I was fucking up then.
Yeah, I found that out through a little bit of experimentation, but basically, every time we add a new race, this here is the entirety of what needs to be copy-pasted and modified. Everything else stays the same.
Okay, I'm going to have to see about setting that as... Well, okay. Copy, paste, and modify? That's for individual races?
Yeah, so we'd have to
Oh,
do this,
fuck.
copy and paste this part 8 times as opposed to, what was it, 450 lines 8 times if we had
Oh
used the
boy.
old setup.
This is going to be, yeah. I don't even want to think of the old setup. The old setup was, oh god. This is what happens though when you go in and find a pre-existing character sheet or something like that that's made for something like Roll20 and modify it. Is by the time you're done, you're like, okay, it's functional. I have no idea what the fuck I did. I don't know how to change it anymore because it's been a couple of years. But yeah, God, that was a disaster at all. Yeah, it got cantankerous. I just couldn't go back and figure out what the fuck was heads or tails of it by that point. And I think part of the problem, technically speaking, was the fact that I did it completely on my own at the time and didn't let anyone in on what the fuck I was working on. So it's not like there was anyone else as kind of a backup brain for when mine fucked up.
Example, there we go.
And quite spectacularly at that.
And start. It's going to be on ports. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the memorial chat box. I do not have any. I'm not dealing with that right now. Not after the conversation I was just in. Anyway.
There we go. It looks quite a bit different in the raw data without the Roll20 stuff interfering, but you get the idea if you
Yeah.
use this too. So I don't have to update and check over and over.
Yeah, at some point I don't know. I'm going to have to isolate what the additional species I'm going to have to actually give a shit about are.
Yeah.
That and we may end up having to add some later because that's kind of one of the things is that we do have, plenty of freaking alien species. It's just most of them aren't probably going to be in play, so I don't feel the need to necessarily add them.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of using 0 through 7 instead of actually the names like it had before.
Oh,
so
yeah.
all you have to do is change this text right here, and that's it.
Well, part of the thing was that the way I initially had it set up is I had, like E for E2 and I for the I2, which I really need to do something about that. Let the people rename their goddamn species or something. For when we get to the actual Ito part of it.
Yeah.
But initially, it's just going to be the classic E2. The Eshalar is going to be fun. An elder race. Ooh. One to be overthrown and beaten to shit, hopefully. What I'm thinking about doing, seeing as there's essentially, for all intents and purposes, a slave race that's in service of the Eshalar, my thought is essentially starting the new saga with sending a ship full of, well, I shouldn't say full of Eshalar because there's so few of them, but more so a ship there with some of their slaves because the Eshalar economy is built on essentially arena combat, going out and basically harvesting animals from other planets to have them fight in these big arena fights. And that's kind of their football. We'll just put it that way, or soccer if you prefer, or I should say, yeah, football. We'll just go with football. It works for us both. Never mind. But that's essentially their football equivalent that they broadcast to the universe and make shitloads on ticket sales and this kind of stuff. Essentially like pay-per-view kind of stuff in a futuristic sense. And that's how they make a lot of their money, or the majority of the money for their planet. And the slave race that they have is essentially used to capture and manage to acquire these animals. And with the E2 moon being a fairly recently discovered astral body, why wouldn't they go there to try and catch some of the local critters? And this way you can kind of incorporate both concepts into once, see about taking the shuttle and then helping them go back to try to help overthrow the Eshalar. I think that could be a fun thing to throw in there, because granted, when we last left off to the E2, they were a Bronze Age society, but you also have a couple different species there, and now they have Nax, courtesy of Mystrium.
Yep.
So that could be a great little element, especially because if they're going to be maintaining essentially a slave race in their homeworld, they do not want them to be exposed to Mystrium. Fuck no.
Short story idea: the Adventures of the Amazing Randy from the E2 homeworld.
Oh gosh, I should actually throw him back in there. He was a fun gag character.
Yep. It was by far my favorite moment when I just fucking slammed the Mystrium into his forehead.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm actually going to at some point head my ass back over to my Twitch account. Now that I've managed to stabilize my internet connection here. I'm not where it's not like going down once or twice a day anymore. I just had to pull one of the two routers because one of the routers just seemed to want to reset randomly, and I don't know the fuck was up with it. But other than it being old, but it seems to be working fine now. So I might just start and go back to what I was initially going to do, which is just stream the entire content from front to end and see if they end up stopping the stream after it hits a certain size on their side, or figure out what the hell happened. Because it might be that.
Don't remember if Twitch has like a maximum stream time. I know there's a lot of people that do 36 and 56-hour long streams. So,
Well,
there's a RuneScape streamer that has done like single sittings of 72 hours straight.
Yeah, this would be, I believe, it's like 63 point something. I don't know. Well, we got 3 people out there, one of which is you, and so we got 2 people out there. And once again, the hangout's open at this point if anyone does want to join. I feel required to say that, but it's not like I'm necessarily entertaining anyone at this point anyway. Then again, I think a lot of the regulars are kind of like, oh, he's talking about the goddamn book again. I don't necessarily blame him for it either. The problem is, it gets to this point that what the fuck else are you going to talk about? Because that's like #1 priority right now is trying to get 3 dealt with. Oh, you still have Roll20 up?
Yes.
Okay. Bounce to. I just want to get your actual response here to a degree. Bounce out of that for a second and go to the storyboard. Sorry, not storyboard. It's story time, I guess, is what I'm calling it. Dun, dun, dun. I'm using the old Thelu marker to represent the character in the story right now with me trying to stage this out. How
It's bad
fucked?
that you don't have the name there, but I can already remember which one it was.
How fucked do you think she is right now in this scenario? Mind you, we do have Shinji's on her side, but that's it.
Knowing Seilu.
Mind you, it's not actually Thelu. It's a character in the current story. But yeah, odds are a little bad.
Yeah. If it were Thalo, I wouldn't be too worried, but...
Oh, no. This is going to be an interesting one, to say the least. Got a fucking soul mage on there, too. Yeah, we got a couple of talents going on there. Granted, one of those is to designate rates. But yeah, this is going to be... I'm trying to figure out how the fuck I'm going to manage this in book form.
Who's the stealth guy?
Oh, he doesn't count. He's non-combatant.
Oh, okay.
But he's basically going to be initially keeping her companion Shinji from being able to do anything.
Has she gained mental control over her prehensile tails yet?
No.
The
incidentally, the rat's there to be collateral damage. He's going to just die when she tries to target the guy on the other side of the pillar.
Well, I mean, he's tied to the pillar anyway, so she could ignore him entirely for a while if she just backed up.
Well, the thing is with Ilanjani is one of the more fucked up races in some regards, in that you can't find it with telepathy, you can't search for it with Mystrionics, you can't even see it on fucking sensors. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist. It might as well be invisible. But they're also stupid, powerful telepaths.
Yeah, because of what she is, the Mongani right now is her biggest threat in the beginning of the battle.
Because of his proximity, hell yeah.
Yeah.
That and the Mongani has Kobatamj.
Yeah, obviously he's a Mongani. They almost all do.
Yeah. Actually, technically speaking, the biggest threat on there is our little lady with the white hair there, because that's the Soul Mage.
Yeah.
And she's got Dark Force Mystrionics.
Yeah, she doesn't exactly have a
no, not a direct line. No, she's not
maximum effective range, so she can't really. That can't be what her first reaction is, because this is like the combat is just starting at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. I haven't even quite started, but yeah, she's a good 15 feet away at this point because she's smart, unlike the others.
What does the Ornithite have?
Ornithite has 2 heads.
Does he have any special abilities?
Having the second head, yeah.
So no ranged attacks.
Well, as you remember, I kind of drew a lot from Douglas Adams, and I have my little jokes in there, this and that. At this particular point in history, the "you don't have to bite my head off" reference, that quote, that colloquialism has been attributed to ornithites because literally that's what they do when they get too hungry.
Yep.
They actually grow a second head, and the second head is essentially just this false head. It's a chunk of meat. And they developed that over the course of their evolution because of a predator on their planet that's a particularly unfriendly flying predator that likes to knock heads off. So eventually they just grew another one.
Gorgalian, what abilities does he have? Just all physical by the looks of it?
Does he have a red dot?
No.
Nah, he's probably just straight physical then.
Okay.
I'd have to double check on that one. I'm away from the computer at the moment with my lovely wireless headset, but I don't think he has anything other than brute strength. But, it's just they're impressive targets. They're big and bony and scary and huge fucking iguana-looking motherfuckers with spines and shit. They're just fucking intimidating. But he'd be the grappler to try and keep her from getting away if she tried to run. Which, yeah, she's not going to do that. Running is not exactly her thing.
Alright, said he can fly.
Yep.
Yep.
Kim said he can indeed fly. They're modeled somewhat after the, not Petrodons, because they're the big ones. What are the smaller ones with the, I don't know.
Pteranodons. Pteranodons are pretty small.
Oh, okay. Pteranodon then. There we go. Your smaller flying reptile with the happy little wings.
Yeah.
But yeah, that graphic, of course, doesn't quite accurately represent one. That's one of the ones I got from that artist that was selling the kits of different critters you could use.
Yeah.
The same one that had that weird, like, snaky-looking thing with tentacle arms, that artist.
Yeah.
Let's see now.
How reliable is Shinji in combat?
Shinji has a knack for telepathy. He has a greater knack, so he's brain related, but unfortunately he's literally tied up right now mentally.
Oh, okay.
Well, they tried to do that to her, but she learned one incredible ability under her last master, which is the ability to fucking improvise.
Yeah.
Or in other words, we can combine shit off the chart and adapt things and fuck this. So he's basically paralyzed in her stead right now at this particular juncture. And at this point, she's trying to figure out what is and isn't real because they've fucked with her head pretty good. And I haven't even answered that yet, so I don't know.
From her perspective, how important to her is Shinji?
She likes him. She has a crush.
So he's not viable as a sacrificial pawn.
Well, enough that you can redirect the mental paralysis to him.
No, I mean quite literally sacrificial. I mean kill him for the sake of the combat.
Now, the Ornithites actually, and they're almost as a gag due to the fact that they have essentially that secondary head that's a fake head. She's going to end up, going to try to do the kill shot, and wait a minute, shit.
Yeah.
That, and it's nice to occasionally throw in something that's much more alien than I usually bother with.
What weapons does she have right now? Just the same pistol?
No. She doesn't have. Technically speaking, she's unarmed. She's wandering around a fucking mall with Shinji when this attack happens, so she's not exactly armed in the conventional sense. So it's down to her knacks, which are formidable in and of themselves.
Yeah.
But being in a place like that, let's not try to pull the ceiling down.
Right. That's a new saying we need.
Yeah. Well, we've definitely seen that in one fucking game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's always an option for her. Is let's just pull the ceiling down and hope that I don't get hit. Let's not do that. You're still screen sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so it's I don't know. I keep looking at the scene, going, okay, this is going to probably get bad. I don't know. It's at that point that I looked at it like, I hope I didn't put her in a situation she can't survive, but I've given myself a little loophole already of her not knowing what's real. Some of the potential attackers might not even exist. Because I don't want to do straight plot armor because that's too much of a fucking cheeseball maneuver. But if I have to modify the scene at some point and do a little bit of a rewrite so that it's actually conceivable, yeah, but I'm going to have to keep rerunning the scenario to figure out how she can get out of this one. And I think I might have figured it out. We'll see. Seeing as in book 1, we do have our lovely circumstance with somebody faking their own death.
Yep.
She could try to figure out how to replicate that ability.
She had Mystrionics and Dark Force, you said? Or Psionics and Dark Force?
No. The Mystrionics and Dark Force is the soul mage that she's going to have to deal with.
Gotcha.
Kayla's a triple threat. Split soul, triple threat with she's got the three. She's got the big three. She's got Psionics, she's got Mystrionics, and she's got Kobatoms.
Okay, let's see.
But the problem is trying to use them in cooperation with one another. Oh, here comes Crimson.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean that's kind of the thing is that even in order to try to keep the magic system stable and what have you, I have to go to some degree by the book. Now, the characters are, as by definition, is able to improvise, so she can essentially combine different things into new techniques, but at the same point, it has to be somewhat parallel to what's already on the charts. Hey, Crimson.
What's up? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, yep. You're fine, man.
Great. Got my wireless mic on, so.
Yeah.
She's still relatively new to being triple threat, though. She's not exactly high rank, is she?
No, she's been trained by fucking Sardaukar at this point. She's good. She's fucking golden. Okay. The problem is...
It's not nearly as bad as it looks, then.
Well, the problem is that I'm not giving her any rank 6s at this point.
That's fine. You don't need rank 6s.
Probably not.
I mean, just being rank 3, she can handle the Soul Mage one-on-one, no problem. If she's rank 4, then the whole group should be fine.
Dude. Soul Mages, the trick with dealing with Soul Mages is that all their attacks are triple power. Because of the way that their power works. That, and if the proverbial rug is pulled out, you know, if they kill one of the whales or what have you, to limit everyone's power in the area, then the Soul Mage can still function and the rest of them are fucked.
How would they manage to kill one of the whales?
A ship deep space. Shoot the fucker. Just like you kill anything else. Fire a fucking missile at it.
I mean, the whales are sentient, aren't they?
Yeah, it can try and get the fuck out of the way, but you can still kill the fucking thing.
It doesn't need to get out of the way. The part of the body the missile's coming from could just be rifted to another plane.
No, they can't do that. No, okay. Now, theoretically, to do that, what they'd have to do is heat up Mystrium to try to create a rift, and that's just not how they function. They're pure psionics.
We must be talking about different whales then, because I'm thinking of the ones that just passively go between the planes and shit out Mystrium.
No. These aren't like they shit out Mystrium, but they don't go between the planes. The only thing that's naturally goes between the planes would be the Rashray.
Gotcha.
Not the... Sorry, go ahead.
What are you guys talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking about both the game and the book. Now, Vic's been with me for a long time in terms of following the channel and this kind of stuff, and knows some stuff that's coming up much later.
Oh, wow. I should not be joining this hangout seeing I'm on book 2.
No, dude, really don't sweat it. Yeah. Basically, Rashray is something that's mentioned in book 1 and does make an appearance in book 2. And the only thing that you'll learn about it from me is that it makes the same noise as a typewriter when it walks.
Yeah,
oh, dude, I hadn't actually realized that. I was having this conversation earlier with Gretchen as a squirrel, and she's talking about this friend of the family that is an author. And how they'd sit there and he'd tell these great stories, and yada, 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 and they'd sit there quietly while he was typing. You hear the click, that clackety, clickety, clackety, clickety, clack. I'm like, holy fuck, that's where I got that noise from. Fuck! It's a typewriter. This thing is like the manifestation of my subconscious fear of deadlines. I get it now.
How does the psionics time distortion work exactly? I don't remember. I know
Okay.
I was going to get that back in season 2, but
Unfortunately, in the case of her as a character, she's not allowed to get any time manipulation abilities. That's just because of who taught her.
gotcha.
So anything having to do with time manipulation and things like most of the rank 5, she can pull off a couple of those in terms of Cobra times, but even then, not often. But the rank 6s, basically, she's not going to be able to pull those off at this point. She has to have both souls fused to be able to do that.
Gotcha.
As an individual soul, she can't pull it off, and that's going to be outside of the purview of this particular combat.
Okay. Well, her best bet, I think, in the beginning of the battle would be to use either a hypnotism or domination or something on the Mangani, and to get back into this area, hopefully pulling Shinji with her to give her a much more advantageous position to take all of them on. And if the Mangani is being forced onto her side to help out, that would be extremely advantageous with the trash mobs.
Well, my thing is most of the trash mobs are sharing a mental link. So if you do something to traumatize the fuck out of one of them, you can traumatize all of them. So my thoughts more along the lines, because we're going to do the gag with how I'm going to have her kill the Ornithite, because he essentially has a fake head on top of his regular head that she's going to just crush and go, fuck, wrong target. But at that point, she's going to have to do something so incredibly violent, both unexpected and just brutally violent, that it will startle everyone else into activity to give her an extra turn to do something else. So the mental image that I'm working with right now, and this is kind of what I mentioned. I think I mentioned this the other day. Trying to figure out a reasonable way to have her basically shred flesh and bone and make a whip out of basically somebody's fucking carcass to use against another target.
Are you taking ideas from me again? God damn it.
Yeah. Well, I started off with turning his spine into a fucking spear, but you came up with something a little bit more grisly. So hey, credit where credit's due.
Yeah. The whole take a shoelace long strip of flesh off of someone's back, tan it into leather, put a spike in the end, and whip them with their own back flesh.
No. We're taking it a step further, because with her abilities with telekinesis and what have you, should be able to basically just basically pull his flesh away from the bone and spin it into a whip on the fly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to make sure it's as grisly as fucking possible for that sequence. Anyway, so how's it going, man?
You know what? I really want to do some writing. However, all of my writing wouldn't generate to gore, unfortunately.
Well, the thing is,
or would?
It would or wouldn't.
It would not. It would not.
Okay.
It's fine.
Well, you don't necessarily need the gore. I mean, the thing is, okay. One of the things they reference, for example, with hijackings during 9/11 is that the hijackers started off by doing something that was so just awful and grisly that everyone else was just too shocked to react initially. And I'm applying that concept to this because I have no idea how the fuck else I'm going to get her out of this shit.
Oh no, you misunderstand. I'm not saying it would be pedantic. I'm saying it just wouldn't automatically translate to gore.
I mean, that's fine. You don't have to write in such a way that you get gore. Most books don't have gore.
No, in this particular case, though, this is going to have. I'm going to have to, and this is going to mean something to Crimson here. Is I'm going to have to very much one up the bouncing head sequence from book 1.
Oh my god, yeah.
I have to one up that by the power of 9. I really have to go overboard a little bit with this one, to the point that I'm hoping I don't make anyone too uncomfortable.
You know what?
If you want to risk making people uncomfortable, you can stab someone with someone else's baculum.
No. The thing, yeah, there is that, obviously. Let's see now. We have an Udbar, no baculum. Shega, no baculum. Ilanjani, no baculum. Darian, no baculum. Eshalar. Eshalar do not have baculums, but I'll have fun with that being the final duel.
Yeah, Eshalar don't really necessarily have bones, so...
Yeah. Well, the Kimseti probably does.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Narok might. I don't know. I've never really looked into the Narok physiology enough. They probably don't have much of... I don't know. They evolved from what? Crustaceans and squiddy
The Kinseti's bones wouldn't make very good weapons. They'd be hollow. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to achieve flight in normal atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
Well,
Fair point.
Here, if you want to get some like gore, like real gore fest, it was this anime called Elfen Lied.
I love Elfen Lied.
No, absolutely fucking not. Elfen Lied, no.
How
Absolutely not. Not good
somebody
enough.
somebody stumbled in a way, and she helped her up by making sure she can see where she came from.
Yeah, I understand that, but at the same point, Gantz.
Gantz is pretty good too. I actually have that one on in box set.
They actually did a live action version of it. I just caught on Netflix the other day. I don't think I liked it.
It wasn't nearly as good.
I don't think I liked it, but it was definitely fucking violent.
I mean, I understand what they cut out and why, but I don't like how they if they were to continue the live action Gantz, they would have to retcon a lot of what they've already made to make it match the actual story.
Yeah, there is.
I don't know how far you made it into Gantz, if you made it through the anime or through any of the post-anime manga at all.
I did not look at the manga, but I did go through the anime. And I then had to look up supplemental material to understand what the fuck I was watching.
Did the vampires make an appearance in the anime? I don't remember.
No, they didn't. Well, not really, no. They had a lot of aliens in there, but the last one was pretty fucking grisly with the weird statue-y looking things.
Okay, yeah. So they didn't make it to the guys with suits and swords, and they didn't make it to the giant four-eyed beast eating people with chopsticks?
No, they did not make it to that one, no. But yeah, that was a wonderfully violent anime that put something like Elfen Lied to shame.
Yeah. The story behind Gantz, if you don't know the actual story, is basically there's this huge organization of aliens that are rich, and they bet on the more primitive races surviving or winning these battles, and the aliens that are there that they're fighting are not in on it. So they're just there. They're just people that live there happily and peacefully, and they're being sent to kill them because bets. And shortly after where the anime ends, this other organization, which is the vampires, is trying to put a stop to these games because they're gruesome and cruel and all that crap. So they're made out to be the bad guy in the story, but they're actually the good guy, obviously.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
And then all of that gets thrown into the shitter because this huge armada of these giant four-eyed creatures that just kind of go from system to system, trying out new cuisines, start gathering up all the humans on the planet and eating them with chopsticks alive.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds delicious.
Yep.
Tasty.
Yeah. The new primitive races they find are a delicacy, and they enjoy them. A couple of them get kept as pets and put in these little relatively little aquariums. Yeah. It's like keeping an ant farm. It's hilarious.
Gantz is one of the most fucked up anime you'll never come across, quite frankly.
Yeah. I actually watched Gantz because I watched Gantz abridged first.
Oh, dude, that one fucking technology that they have in there, I think is just... I think it's both grisly and great at the same point, because essentially when somebody survives, they're basically recreated in the room that's kind of your starting point. And they do it almost like they're using like a fax machine or 3D printer, just zip, 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 layer by layer. It's really trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Not something that I could steal because it'd be way too obvious, but I love the concept.
God, and the main character is a modern day incel.
Yeah, he is. I have to acknowledge that. He's kind of a proto incel.
Oh God, please don't talk about the incels. Oh God, like, take it as a guy who don't look the best, a guy who don't. You can go get women. Just stop being an asshole.
Yeah, pretty much.
You don't have to stop being an asshole.
Right.
You can go with the 1 in 100 rule. Go out to a bar, ask 100 women, hey, you want to go fuck? One of them will say yes.
Fair.
You don't have to do that. Just treat women not as a token to put favor points in. Just like, hey, you want to come do this with me? If you do, great.
I mean, it's like the final episode of the recent season of Rick and Morty even had one of the 1 in 100 girls, the fucking sea cucumber bitch.
Yeah, fuck. Okay.
I mean, like, if worst come to worst, and I love heavyset women, go fuck a fat bitch. Like, just have fun, enjoy it. I don't
know. A lot of heavier women work harder to keep your attention. We'll just say so.
This is true. This is very true.
Look, Look, I'm not the most attractive guy, but I am an attractive guy, and I have fun with whatever I have fun with.
Oh, dude, if you have things like personality and you're able to make somebody laugh, you're in like Flynn, man. That's all it really takes. If
So what you're
that's
saying
all
is
you're
I'm
after.
screwed on all levels. Thanks.
There's a nice little piece of technology that they created back in the 40s or 30s called condoms.
Hang on, Nodzick. I'd like to point out something to you. How many women write to prisons to serial killers and whatnot? You're fine.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great. I got a great story to go with that, actually.
Oh shit.
So
when
I made it to Langley Air Force Base, the commander of the squadron came and met with me and talked with me for a bit, and he saw the picture that was on my driver's license at the time, and I looked like in that old license I had, I looked like a spitting image, like direct Xerox copy of the Unabomber.
Oh God, I can see
and
it.
I told him, right?
Yeah,
and I told him a bit of my story and stuff like that, and he decided to make a joke, and he's like, and he later grew up to be the Unabomber. And what was hilarious is I actually grew up like less than 2 miles from where the Unabomber grew up.
Or so he claims.
Yep.
Dun dun dun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Actually, I've been hoping to get Crimson in a hangout at some point. I wanted to mess with them a little bit.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Because I'm not gonna be in long. I have friends in town I gotta go see, but go ahead.
No, okay. After having read book 1 and not having seen book 2 yet, I was actually going to see if I could get your predictions of what you think you can expect in the next book.
Well,
just so I have like an archive of it so I can laugh later.
Well, I told you it would seem like the way the Shadow was acting, like she was gonna jump Vance's balls. Who was that? Soul was gonna try to basically who does Soul capture?
Saul captured Flare.
Flare, yeah. He was gonna basically have her in a Princess Leia costume somewhere, and Corran was just gonna like, ha! You thought he pops out finally out of Soul and takes over Vance, or tries to at least.
Interesting on that tail end.
So yeah, you can't say, well, he's Corbin's soul worm, and then expect him not to make a move at least in the second book when he thinks Kayla is dead, because they're scared of the Shadow. They don't expect her, but after what she's been through, and if she survives, when she survives, if they get back together, it's gonna be a bloodbath somewhere.
Well, we will see what happens. I'm not giving any fucking spoilers on 2. Well, other than to say that you will eventually hear the clickety clack.
No, it's funny because it reminds me of the anime Yu-Gi-Oh.
Huh,
it took a while for them to get there. It was like in the anime.
Like that's an insult.
No. I'm waiting to see where he's going with it.
In the anime, the Yu-Gi-Oh, the kid who put the puzzle together unlocks an ancient pharaoh who basically hijacks his body, and over the point of the story, you find out, well, he's not really hijacking his body. He was a reborn version of the pharaoh that died. So that's why they worked so well together. That not that it was a possession, more of a remerger.
Yeah, he frequently inhabits the body of an 11-year-old boy and has an unnatural obsession with skin-tight leather.
Which means he's a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
With leather. Chaps.
With leather.
But it's like it appears that way, that, well, no, you're not my weakness, you're not my demon. We are one part of the same soul, or we are a rebirth of the same soul. It's the idea between it's the idea that the Egyptians used to have, that part of the soul goes off to live in the other world, and a part of it actually gets reborn. It's the same soul with different parts, and if they were ever to get back together, it's let's just frankly say, if it was
the car or whatever the heck it was,
yeah, if those parts were to get back together, it will be for a specific purpose, and it will be, oh shit, the world is ending, and I'm causing it, or I need to save it.
Cool. I dare say that some of those notes you hit pretty good. Yeah, this will be fun.
At least it's not. At least I know it's not a bad take on Twilight fan fiction.
Oh hell no! Fuck that.
That became
fanfic. I don't like. Okay, I don't completely oppose fanfic. I think it's a good way for people to get their start, but still.
I'm gonna put it this way: the story of Eshalar and the politicians of Old Earth is a better love story than Twilight.
Yeah. Granted, that was the Colmians predominantly, but yeah. You just had Eshalar on the brain because of the new arc for the next game series.
Yeah, that's my bad. They look basically the same. Not really.
What are you talking about? Colmians look like they're octopoidal.
They have multiple limbs and flesh. They're the same thing.
No, but they're all legs, man. They're freaking tentacles. Tentacle monster does not equal 6-armed, like Hindu god-looking thing.
All you people look the same to me.
Oh. So say the aliens, yes.
Yep.
Actually, that was actually one of the more entertaining parts, because there were, one of the races that, it was a little iffy, because this was one that I just completely, when I was initially creating my universe, I completely fucking lifted it from somewhere else, Planet of the Apes, the Mungani. I mean, hell, the name's even pretty much there.
Yep.
But in the case of Mungani, I was one day sitting there talking with my wife, and I'm referencing all the different tribes and all the different groups that were sent off of Earth before its destruction on the Ark ships. And I kind of paused and I thought, oh shit, wait a minute. She's like, what? I'm like, where did the Mungani come from? Would that have been one of the... She was like, no. Silverbacks. They just didn't know that they were not considered human. I'm like, good enough.
Shit, they may be more evolved than some of these people on the internet.
Oh, dude, the thing is, it occurred to me that if I picked any, current subgroup of humanity, that I'd just be absolutely raked over the fucking coals. And she came up with silverbacks. So I'm like, that works. I will just modify their appearance slightly. We're good. I've only had one in the story so far, and they didn't need much description, so... We can get into their background later, because that one I never quite covered. And aliens not being able to figure out the difference between one, oh crap, what's the word? Okay, all apes are, no, not mammals, lower down than that. Primates. Trying to tell one primate apart from the others for aliens might not be that easy.
Shit, it's hard for me to tell one human apart from the other.
Sometimes, right?
I mean, there's a bunch of different kinds of monkeys that actually have the human-like nose.
Oh yeah, those ones with those huge fucking noses are hilarious. I can't. What are they? Not the cats or something else.
Not even the one with the bulbous noses, but there's actually a bunch of little monkeys that would fit on the palms of your hands that actually have a human-looking face.
Really, the Reese's monkey kind of looking ones, but
yeah, but with the bald face.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we're not so different as we like to pretend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, other than our technology, that's what sets us apart ultimately.
I could see those monkeys being evacuated thinking that they were a subset of these sentient races, too.
Oh, man. I mean,
they have a pygmy relative.
Yeah, they'd probably make a fucking zoo and send it off to other planets. Maybe the whole thing about the Shakiri's bullshit. Maybe they just went and raided Earth for a different animal life and planted it elsewhere. We never know what is actually just dogma and what's actual history in any of these kind of things, because so much time's passed.
Yeah, that's kind of what, that's one of my favorite things, but my biggest hangups with humans being basically losing Earth. Because say if you look at it, the Titan AE, that really wasn't that bad because it was only within the span of a generation. But it's almost, I like the fact that the Earth gets a chance to breathe from the motherfucking humans.
Yeah.
However, humans are so fucking adaptable that if they had to live among other species, there will not be a humanity left.
Well, I don't know. That's kind of thing is I actually took humanity and gave them a chance to go and re-evolve and then re-enter the cosmos.
Yeah,
Kind of a reset switch.
And I get that. It's just that humans are so adaptable because they're so fucking lazy. Like, well, yeah, I'm this now, so don't call me by my Earth name.
Yeah. Depending on the subset of humans, so a lot of them would end up at war with whatever they're living with.
Okay. This is something much later. This is a little bit of a spoiler. Lorik and his charming little ship ended going through a gate that, as it was being struck by a weapon that displaced the destination point. And he actually does end up back on the Orion Arm, which has been quarantined for a long fucking time by this point. So he actually does get to meet in one of the auxiliary stories, meet the current inhabitants of Earth.
Oh,
and yeah, they're not human anymore, to say the least. Matter of fact, our technology got the better of us. Yeah, he returns to the fucking robot army. He is going to be one of the characters to return during the absolute finale of the story.
I knew Cybertron was Earth. Oh, God.
Well, that's one of the plausible ideas for a great filter. So,
but yeah, Lorik will be returning with essentially a robot army. At the very end, toward the very end of the entire series, Lorik will be making his grand return. But throughout the majority of the story, he's just missing. Nobody knows where he went. Ooh, I know.
All right, guys, I have to get going. It was fun. Did you see your review?
No, I have not actually seen it yet.
I put it up there Friday, so.
Well, I'm going to have to check the author account maybe because I didn't see anything post on Amazon.
Yeah, let me check it on my end because I know I did it.
Because I'm seeing nothing on my end. I don't know. Maybe it needs. I doubt that they need approval from an author. That doesn't seem to make sense. But who the fuck knows? I don't know. I haven't really messed with it myself. But regardless, thank you.
I mean, like, to be honest with you, I try to put my bias aside because obviously I've heard
knowing the author bias, or
I've heard part of the story and knowing the author bias, but it was a good first book. Now, if I would have known that if it wasn't part of a series, yeah,
you would have been part of the lynch mob based on the ending.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you, 13. In Corrales, for the majority of races, at least, or if there is some kind of standard, I don't know, what do they have in the place of mitochondria?
Most of them, most of the current races that are dealt with in the stories are, the vast majority of them are some form of parallel evolution to some degree, and this is part of why so many of them are humanoid in nature. Now, anthropomorphized certainly to some degree, and now in terms of a story narrative, part of that is just because it's a lot easier to put the descriptions and for people to form a mental image of what the characters look like. But a lot of this is that there were only 3 races that seeded life throughout the universe. The Colmians, their genetics instead of the, GCAT is the way to put it, GCAT. The A is replaced by a U, which is normally only seen in artificial life forms. And their DNA is very similar to the mitochondrial, although the storage of it is a little bit different. But they do have an equivalent of it, which would be like ctDNA or something along those lines. I mean, mitochondrial DNA, though, it's in terms of that DNA that's passed down and what have you. That's pretty much a standard through all species, although it might not take the same form as it does in humans. It's a very similar kind of concept in that you have your precursors and what have you. The exceptions to this would be things like the rash ray and the Jani. And that quite a number of the anti-hominids, because they break all the fucking rules. Because the anti-hominids have really no connection at all, morphologically or what have you, to any other race. They don't fit the standard mold. I mean, for example, you have let's go to the Ulmaru straight out. We're talking a crystalline life form, and certainly in that case, you're not going to have that. But they're going to have some shard within them, which is essentially a source shard. And that source shard is essentially the seed that the crystalline form grows from. And if you shatter that shard, you kill it. But that's not quite empty DNA, and they don't have DNA in any kind of form. It's just a matter of the patterns in which the crystals grow, because very alien life form.
Yeah. Well, I just mean for biological life forms, when it comes to evolution here on Earth, the biggest and most important mutation, it's not really a mutation by definition, but the most important events in biological evolution here on Earth was most likely the absorption and incorporation of mitochondria, which is a completely separate life form to produce the ATP and the energy for the cell. Without that, life may not have successfully maintained multicellular structures at all.
And once you get to the idea of without that, life might have to have that in order to go through that process. So it's a safe assumption that there's some equivalency within most of the alien species, if not all. Now, granted, as due to the fact there are some alien lives forms that are truly alien to what we know on Earth, it doesn't necessarily apply to them.
I found out what the problem was. I included the interview link that I did, but I'm taking it out.
Oh.
And it should be there.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you very much. Yay, that makes 1 out of the 8 that I need to market with that one fucking group.
Well, talk to you guys. Bye.
That should about drove me nuts. You need 8.
Have a good one, Crimson. Yeah, that's when it comes to great filters, there's a lot of plausible. You know what a great filter is, right?
Sorry, I spaced out for a second there.
You know what a great filter is, right?
No, I'm not sure.
Do you know what the Fermi paradox is?
Yes.
So the great filter is the proposed solution to the Fermi paradox, in that there is some barrier to life becoming sufficiently advanced enough for us to find it. And there's two, when it comes to the great filters hypothesis, there are 2 possible outcomes. One, the great filter precedes our current stage of evolution, which is hopefully the case. It's something like mitochondria happening to allow anything to sufficiently become advanced enough. And if that's the case, then cool, maybe we're the first and we'll be the ones to populate the galaxy or even multiple galaxies and that kind of stuff. Awesome. The other possibility is that the great filter is after us. Now, if we find other intelligent life out there and we can communicate with it and detect it and that kind of stuff, that is a bad thing for this hypothesis, because that means that we haven't come across the great filter yet and we're pretty much doomed.
Well, there's actually 2 notions that I kind of incorporated into when I was setting this all up. In terms of things like the Fermi paradox and what have you, there's one notion, which is that they're just on the other side of the proverbial beach, and every one of our little solar systems is just one grain of sand on that beach, and they could be all the way across there. Now, even if they're sending out radio transmissions or what have you, within the first, I think it's like 10 light years or something like that, it's less than 100, I know that much, based on what I was told. That those radio waves will just vanish into the microwave background radiation, completely into signal as they break down over dissipation as they break down and the signal decay. So you'd need a better method of communication. Now, there's also the assumption that any race that's out there would be using the same kind of technologies to transmit messages that we are, which on one level brings me back to this novel that I couldn't tell you who wrote it off the top of my head. But the title is something along the lines of "And no one." I think it was "And no one spoke" or something along those lines. It might have been a short story, And it's a story about these 3 different planets where, you know, each planet has something that the other 2 need, but they're not contacting each other because everyone's listening to hear broadcasts from another nation or another planet, but nobody's actually sending the transmissions.
Mm-hmm. We send transmissions.
That was the premise of the story, nonetheless.
Yep.
So it was either that or the reverse, that nobody was listening and everyone was speaking. It was one or the other, I don't recall. But even then, with things like I said, radio waves are going to, after a while, be indistinguishable. Even if you did some kind of transition with just straight up light, eventually it's going to vanish. The biggest
blooming
problem
effects. Even if you shoot a laser beam into space, high-powered laser beam, eventually blooming takes hold.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention if it passes through a sufficient area that is lacking in matter or even dark matter, the quantum properties and superposition would cause the laser beam to possibly be going in a different direction when it starts interacting with stuff again.
Redirected, bent, warped, what have you. You have all these kind of issues. This is why when I was working on Corollas, trying to figure out how the fuck you can have almost instant communication, I had to basically make what I refer to as light wave satellites, that they basically fire the beam of light at the satellite. The satellite folds space within itself and then redirects the message. So I had to use actually folding space as a way to try to compensate for that, because otherwise you have this huge universe and it takes forever to contact anyone. There has to be some kind of workaround, and that was what I ended up inventing.
Yeah,
Which is problematic with my main character, seeing as anything having to do with gay technology makes her violently ill.
Yeah, you either have to fold space and send the message through the fold, or you have to, or quantum tunneling has to become a thing, and that's entirely hypothetical too. So.
Yeah, I like the idea of quantum tunneling. I don't know. There's certain aspects of it that strike me as being a little, I don't know, man. It's just, I like the idea of it, but the idea of being able to transmit something in a cohesive manner with that, I really question.
Well, the idea of quantum tunneling actually it makes a lot of sense, because it's basically during the initial parts of the Great Expansion of the Big Bang, these quantum particles that were separating were causing slight tears on a quantum level in the universe, and as the universe stretched out, those tears just increased in size.
Okay, I get that. Here's the issue, though. I'm not writing this for people that are incredibly scientifically literate. I write this story so it can be enjoyed by anyone. I don't put heavy science in terms of it. It's more of your fantasy story in a sci-fi universe. And something like that would take so much explanation to the reader that you're overly burdening them.
Yep.
So, you know, something like folding space, that's easier to try to get people to grasp.
Yeah, look how many movies incorrectly use the same fucking cliche of, imagine you have a piece of paper and you want to get from point A to point B and you get it folded over and stick the pencil through it. That's not how it works, but whatever.
Actually, the way that I actually have it kind of set up, with the way that I try to have it, is more along the lines of you take cloth and but this cloth is very porous. And you're taking the cloth, overlaying one piece of cloth over the other, and then lowering it down so it fits together like a puzzle piece. So basically, you're either on the top part or the bottom part of the fold while this is going on. And that's the thing with the main character in the books, is that she can feel this happening.
Yep.
And it just makes her violently ill.
You know, the polarized photons experiment for demonstrating quantum physics and possibly demonstrating string theory, right?
Uh-huh.
Where you can take a polarized filter and you put it over a light source, and only half of the light makes it through because only half of the light's facing the way the polarized filter's spaces are facing. And then you take another of the same one and you turn it 90 degrees to the right, so only the particles facing that way would make it through. It becomes solid black because the only ones making it through the first one are facing this way and they're not facing that way. But if you take a third one and turn it turn it 45 degrees, you got about 100% of the light coming through from the source.
Why does that remind me of my cloth analogy?
Right. But my mind's going through quantum things right now.
Yeah, I think you're too entangled with yourself right now.
Yep. But it makes
Getting tangled up in yourself has an all new meaning.
Yep. That particular experiment makes me wonder, when it comes to the dual slit experiment and superposition, if we measure before or after, the superposition disappears and we lose the interference pattern. That's basic. But if we take a dual slit, then we take another dual slit and move it slightly off to the right, do we still get the interference pattern? And if so, we take a third one and move it slightly more to the right. Then we take a fourth one and move it slightly to the left. 0 should make it through, but I'm willing to bet we get an interference pattern.
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know that any experiments along those lines have ever been ran, but it's an interesting thought.
I would love to see if an experiment run like that, but I'm willing to bet there'd be an interference pattern.
Yeah, I actually went through and took some of the, we'll say, more normal sci-fi concepts, you know, warp drive and this kind of stuff, and I didn't want to implement them as they normally are, because that's just like, oh, well, we're going to use this as an easy way to kind of jump around. Instead of that, you have jump space and all this other stuff, because if you're like 40,000 years in the future, why would you have just one means to get around? So you have jump space, you have warp, you have all these different technologies that are all used sometimes by different races, sometimes just in one simple ship. And these are technologies that have been developed in many cases by different species over the course of history. Because by that point you'd have we have everything going all the way back to the slipstreams, which was one of the earlier ways that it was done, which was just basically compressing space in such a way that you're able to travel a great distance in a short period of time due to contractions of space-time.
Yeah, I like the idea of not actually traveling to get from one place to another. The basic idea of folding space, where you're not moving, the space is moving around you.
Yeah, the issue is that we have in Cross there are star links that function similar to gates, but it's point to point. The only Stargate that I have, once you go through, there's no fucking ride back. It's a one-way trip.
Yeah.
But even then, that would be such a strategic benefit to an empire that was trying to wage war that you'd have a hard time completing one if you tried to start the project.
Interesting thing, not really entirely all that related, but when it comes to wormholes, if you were able to create a wormhole through gravity alone, while you would appear on the other side and make it through the other side and be there, you would still be at the event horizon of the entrance at the same time. Like you would be there for an infinite amount of time.
Are you using the idea of spaghettification with black holes and whatnot?
Well, even without spaghettification, if somehow we were able to overcome spaghettification and have one item going through treated as in the one position that is being affected by the same amount of gravity at the same time, assuming we were able to overcome that because of the warping of time itself as you get to the gravity well, you would be at the event horizon, at the entrance to the wormhole for an infinite amount of time to any observer on that side of the wormhole, and yet you would also make it through.
Okay, I think I get you. I think I get it now. That hurt my head, but I think I get it now.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I might have tried a synapse with that one, but I'm not sure the physics is right on that, but it's interesting anyway around it, even to try to contemplate. But then the question is, so you have somebody on the other side that's seeing you there for that proverbial infinite amount of time relative to their position. If they start shooting at you, are they going to hit you on the other side?
Right. Yes and no. But what's more interesting is if you are there for that infinite amount of time and you make it through, and then you come back to the entrance the long way and then collapse the wormhole, are there two of you?
No, because you collide with yourself, right? Potentially.
What if you? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you are. Is this
kind of like a Douglas Adams moment of trying to trying to hit the ground and miss or something like that? Throw yourself to the ground and miss to fly?
Something like that. I don't know how you'd be able to collapse the wormhole without also destroying everything on the event horizon, though, through annihilation. The gravity waves that would be created from the collapsing of the wormhole would pretty much tear everything apart in the vicinity on a component level.
Well, this conversation makes me strangely happy that I didn't bother with wormholes.
Well, gravity isn't the only way to create a wormhole, so...
But yeah, I don't have anything akin to that right now. And it's funny because it's been a thing for so fucking long in terms of science fiction, but it was something I never adopted.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was more the stability aspect or what, but I just never adopted wormholes. You know, I like things that require enough technology or what have you that you can actually destroy them. So, while they might have a strategic advantage, there's also a reason to nuke the fuckers.
Yeah.
Let's see, now what am I doing here? Oh, another comment apparently. I might look at it later. I don't know. But yeah, I took on board what Catastrophic had said in the initial comment. I haven't double checked it, but that was the whole Shadow is thing with the hyphenation, or rather the apostrophe replacing the I. But I'm probably going to have to go back and revisit that. Now, well, I'll be technically changing the title to something that is not intended. I don't know. I'm going to have to give it some more thought and discuss it with the wife because she's the one in charge of the author's account. Because I know not to be, because I will get temperamental and pissy and end up removing shit. Let's see if it actually updates this thing at some point. I'm curious. There we go. Well, let's see. Not showing any stars here yet. Let's see if they pop up at some point. I don't know. Mess with them later, I guess. Oh, there we go. I actually do have it there.
Hey. Oh, he's up to 4 stars. How rude.
Oh, stop that. Honestly, I prefer that to like the random 5-star horseshit.
Yep. If you're ever reading reviews of something, you generally skip all the 5 and 1 stars anyway.
Yeah, honestly, I mean that's kind of thing is I always assume that if it's 5 stars, like man, let's see what we have for like. Actually, I honestly look at 2 first. I will sometimes look at 1 stars, but only when there's a lot of them. I'm more interested in things that don't look like they're somebody putting up a review for themselves.
Yep. Anything that looks like a self-review or a paid-for review or a spite review, yeah.
And you get a lot of spite ones, let me tell you. Oh, actually, I haven't gotten jack shit, but the on general things, you'll see a lot of those.
Yeah. Instructions unclear. Crushed testicles. Anyway.
Ow. That's the only 2 of this crap here. Actually, that might have been from earlier. I haven't been really paying much attention. Yeah, I guess those are from earlier. Okay. Let me look here. Yep, sure enough. Okay, because the last thing there is the how do you have it within. Okay, not deck neutral. I said that so convincingly. Anyway, I should probably consider taking this offline at some point. And once again, the link is out there if anyone wants to join in and give me something else to fucking talk about for a change. That'd be nice. Otherwise, we'll keep going on about this shit. Actually, at some point, I should try to get to work at 3 and see if I can get her out of this goddamn situation, because I painted her into a little bit of a corner with this.
Here you go. Instructions unclear. Crushed testicles.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Just kept moving my left foot, but my right foot wasn't allowed to.
Oh, Christ. The wound. The wound. Oh, hanging around to folks like you, I wonder why I have strokes. Oh, wait, no, I don't. Man. But yeah, I actually reference Amaranth and this, and I have their comments still up there. And I keep kind of glancing over, going, yeah, there's definitely a point in there. But yeah, it frustrates me sometimes because there are things that have become tropes over the last several years, and when I first was writing the shit, they weren't. But the language that's always used when promoting books is everything after a while fucking sounds the same, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a pain in the ass, quite frankly. But what the hell can you do? There's certain language that just it's part of the shit.
Meet Alex Sam, our main character. They were just an average, regular person until something special happened, and then powers and excitement.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, anytime somebody's like, what's the story about? I'm like, oh, fuck. I have a little bit of that because I'm like, it's not about one fucking thing. I mean, the core story is this girl trying to figure out who the fuck she is, and it's complicated.
And powers and excitement, and things get complicated.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But the thing that you find out, because initially it's like, oh no, there's this thing going on, and there's intergalactic conspiracy, and there's a war that's going to be breaking out, and she's dragged into the center of it, which is technically a lie. The people that are trying to draw her into their little plot are also the ones that were behind the cloning process. They made her to fulfill a purpose.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of a deviation, but if you don't want to spoil that, you don't fucking mention it in the blurb.
Yep. Well, to be completely and totally blunt, if she were to be entirely destroyed on one of those ships instead of making it through the story here, that wouldn't have much effect on the actual, like, war in general.
No, it really... Well, in general, no, it wouldn't. Now, her particular arc is... The thing is that there's this quote prophecy that's this big fucking deal, and her brother technically is supposed to be the chosen one. So I'm kind of telling the story of the person that's supposed to be protecting the chosen one. And that's what she was, in theory, grown for, according to the people that initially funded the fucking thing. However, they weren't the ones that oversaw it. The ones that oversaw it decided to fuck shit up deliberately. And that in the station has a fucking sense of humor of its own in its own dark way. So, hostile AI should not be in charge of your cloning process. It's a bad idea, just saying.
Yep.
So, in any case, she ended up being one fucked up little puppy on some levels. And, so it was this whole fucking drawn-out thing, most of which doesn't even necessarily even appear in the book because it's not important. She was cloned, something went a little sideways, she effectively has two souls in her, oh fucking well, play on, figure out who the fuck you are, That's your goal. Figure out who you are and learn to deal with yourself. And that's ultimately where it comes down to with that. But there are certain things that it's like, yeah, I don't want to ruin the story, and it's kind of free flow as it is. It's not the most linear story. I don't like overly linear stories. I like things to be a little bit messy like real life is.
Yep.
Because just because somebody intends things to go a certain way doesn't mean they will. No matter how much of a fucking oracle they think they are.
Yep.
But even that is included in this silly little rhyme. Okay, and as you all can hear in the external, Nodvik is currently drying his balls.
Something like that. Someone's mowing the lawn next door. I'm outside.
Oh, okay. There we go. But yeah, I had a shit ton of fun writing it, and I hope people enjoy it half as much as I enjoyed writing it. That's ultimately what this comes down to, just wanting people to have fun. As I was saying earlier, I didn't write this to be the next greatest fucking book in the world. I didn't write this to be some American classic or any crap like that. I wrote it hoping some people would enjoy it. It's as simple as that. And I think if you're going to be realistic, that's all you can hope for, is to entertain some folks. And I'm back talking about the goddamn book because it's like #1 fucking thing on my mind because I'm working on 3. God damn it! I can't get away from it. Escape! Oh, I tell you, that's half why I've been going into other people's hangouts. Give me something else to think about and talk about for a little bit here and there, because otherwise my brain sinks back into the story, especially because I've had a rough fucking scene. I mean, that's the thing, is I keep trying to challenge myself on some levels. When I did the rewrite from the original to its more current iteration, the challenge I made to myself was finding a way to write a story in which I can kill off the POV character and keep fucking going. And that was, yeah, I think I did a good job of it. We'll see, I don't know. I mean, I've had my first person that's finished it to give commentary. Rock the fuck on. I'll wait to see what he has to say when I get through 2. Incidentally, for those that actually, follow me and know what's been going on with me over the last couple of years, technically speaking, the stroke exists in the book in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, the voice changes.
Well, no. We're not talking about book 3 where there was that shift that I'm trying to fix. There was when I was doing the rewrite of 2, and this is well after a combat scene and what have you. This had all been post-stroke. there's a point at which the main character collapses, and it's that wonderfully exaggerated way. You have the blood coming out of the nose and eyes, kind of, that elaborate kind of thing. Luckily for her, the person that had brought her to the fucking planet's a doctor, so yay, she has a neurologist there to do some fucking brain surgery for her. And things get a little bit more complicated after that. But in a manner of speaking, that there is almost a place marker to note when the first stroke happened. Now, granted, that entire sequence leading up to that was written post-stroke, but it's still kind of, for myself, a little bit of a marker to note where my brain went and tried to kill me. It was a bit before that, but yeah. So it's kind of in there. Now, normally you're not supposed to interject things from your actual life into the story, and this is most often seen with characters that will sit there and pause to light a cigarette or to get a cup of coffee or this kind of thing. They'll just sit there and insert something from real life into the narrative. If they're a smoker, the character smokes, and the character just seems to happen to light up whenever they do. I can't do that because I'm a fucking chain smoker, obviously. Otherwise, every line would be, and they smoked, and they smoked,
Yep.
And let me tell you, these chains get heavy sometimes. Bump.
I don't remember. In the game, did your player character Thelu ever actually have any interactions with Syntholo?
No, I don't think so. And
that would have been interesting.
I'm pretty sure Thelu wasn't properly introduced until after he left.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Now, that would have been interesting to meet an E2 with the exact same name as a different character he already knew.
Yeah, well, he didn't know her. That's kind of the thing is, Syntholo shows up fairly late in 3, and, spoiler, there's no Thelu at that point. Actually, anyone that has managed to catch any of the now offline streams of me working on the story, there's fairly frequent references to cleaning Thelu chunks out of the console of the shuttle.
Yeah.
Her death was a little spectacular. And at the hands of Rukahar, because he's an asshole. He is kind of the more central villain of the others and becomes more so as it goes on. Eventually she's going to have to face him down. He's a dick.
In the cloning facility, how much of an effect can you actually have on your experiments' results when it comes to, say, their propensity for knacks?
Actually, that's part of why they sold the facility, to try to figure out how to isolate them and replicate them.
So if there's a hostile AI that, the people who bought it probably don't know is hostile, that oversees it, that can force two souls into one body, when does it decide to have a Psionicist soul and a Cyberpath soul in the same body?
You can't. You fucking can't. It can't be done. And that's because cyberpathy is a mutation of the telepathy gene. On a genetic level, it's the same fucking thing. It's just whether you're dealing with being able to communicate with minds or machines. So those two cannot co-inhabit. It's kind of like trying to have two different chemical imbalances in the spine simultaneously. They're incompatible. It's like, well, I've heard some people claim to be bipolar and schizophrenic. They're usually one or the other and just not getting it because these are two very different imbalances.
I think that comes from that idea of being both of those comes from the misunderstanding of schizophrenia as being this dissociative identity thing. While having voices or different personalities and shit can be correlated, and in fact is correlated to schizophrenia, it is not necessarily schizophrenia.
Well, also in terms of the bipolar thing, if you are incredibly manic or what have you, hypomanic or hypermanic for that matter, when you're going through one of these extreme episodes, you can also occasionally do things like hear voices and what have you, because there's a certain psychoses that can come with that as well. So there is a certain overlap, but these are still two different imbalances. I think one of them's has to do with dopamine and the other serotonin or something like that. I don't remember which. It's been a long fucking time. But yeah, the two of them kind of cancel each other out if you had both. But I hear people saying, I'm this and that. I'm like, you're misdiagnosed. How are you?
I hear voices in my head. Well, that's kind of normal. I mean, if you were hearing voices in your foot, then come talk to me.
Oh shit! There we go. I hear voices in my ears occasionally. Oh no! Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a certain vagueness to, and it's not the most exact science. It's not that they can like stick a probe in your fucking head to see what's going on with your biochemistry. So it's kind of hand wavy, and I'm more than happy to acknowledge that. But unfortunately, it's the best tool we have right now.
It's like this, doctor. In the morning when I wake up, I just can't sleep, and after finishing dinner, I experience a sudden loss of appetite. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. But I mean, that's the other thing when it comes to things like mental illness and what have you, is that if it doesn't interfere with your life, it's not a fucking disorder. Fuck off. If you can manage to adapt to it, at that point, you're good. And hell, I had to learn to adapt to bipolar for the majority of my life without much of a problem. It wasn't until after that first stroke, when it fucking went away and then came back after this very last one, that's when the problem came in, because I managed to basically ditch all those coping mechanisms. I didn't need them for 2 years, so I kind of stopped paying attention. And now I'm like, oh, fuck. I need people to point out when I'm being a loony at this point. Ah.
Well, as Drayden said, there is a pleasure in being mad, which none but madmen know.
And that's why we write. Oh, God. That was actually part of what got me started. I had a massive impulse control disorder when I was a kid. And as such, I'd sit there having these flashes of things that I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that kind of stuff. And I needed a way to redirect it, and that was part of why I wrote. I started off being that proverbial man of action, which I later learned wasn't a good thing. It's better to be a thoughtful person and consider your actions instead of just doing.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand impulse disorders. Like, I don't know.
Just because you have the impulse doesn't mean you immediately act on it.
Well, in some cases you don't have a choice. There are certain impulse disorders where
No, what I'm saying is there's a point at which you have to learn a means by which to either redirect it or control it.
Yeah, like certain people with impulse disorders can't drive because if they get the impulse to suddenly shove their foot down on the gas pedal, they can't stop it, And yeah, I think the idea of impulse disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder, for instance, comes from like the movie As Good as It Gets, and they think it's just this weird tic that people have, and it really is more than that.
No, I mean, I'll get there was, back when I was with my ex-wife years ago, I had this momentary flash in my head of grabbing her arm and shoving it down the disposal. Sounds incredibly fucking disturbing. That was the random impulse. Did I act on it? Hell no. Am I aware that this... But the thing is, I learned to disassociate from that at a young age, so these flashes, I don't act on them, I just... They're just there. They're background noise. They're pretty much immediately ignored at this point, because I disassociated myself with that to the point that it might as well be somebody else's brain having the thought. So at this point, it's just pictures, not something that's encouraging actual action.
Yeah. But when it just comes to random impulses, everybody has those. I mean, who hasn't fantasized about opening the pits of hell in the ground and absorbing the people in front of you because they pissed you off?
Only in a literary sense.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is I turned
the whole building cracking in half and them falling in. Been there before.
Actually, in Krauss, we refer to that as the urban renewal spell.
Yeah. Antimatter blast.
No, it's just an antimatter spark. That's all it takes to take down a fucking building. Urban renewal. Boop. There you go. Twin Towers ain't got nothing on that shit. Granted, that spell in game was used once when I was running the games. The guy managed to get the spell. He wanted to use it once, and he used it on a Tazcore world. Yay, corporate headquarters. That caused problems.
Our universal currency that was worth 1 of itself is now worth 0 of itself. Anyway.
We've turned it into Bitcoin. What the fuck? Yeah, that was a day. Everybody got. The thing is with Tazcore, it's kind of like, okay, this is a big mega conglomerate, the intergalactic Walmart for all fucking intents and purposes. You can get anything from Tazcore. But, you take out the corporate headquarters, and for like the next day, everyone's sitting there going, oh no, what are we going to do? The day after that, everyone's like, I got my promotion now.
It's actually incredibly difficult to try to imagine a sufficiently advanced society for interstellar travel without currency.
Yeah.
But when
I
it comes
only
to
have one.
interstellar travel, because of all the different races that would have to be there for a story setting that has interstellar travel and still be coherence,
Well,
they
I only
go ahead.
have one society that doesn't have any kind of formalized currency, and part of that is because, technically speaking, they're a slave race. You can probably already guess who they are. Fucking
Yeah.
Karzan.
Mhm.
But that's because the people that are the high ups in the government and this and that, they're the ones that are in charge of the production units of the planet. And basically, this is where the planet gets its money from, and the centralized government is in charge of how they allocate that. And it typically doesn't go to anyone other than the high-ranked officials within their military. Everyone else is just basically stuck with what they're allocated with. It's not a great government model, but it's
But
theirs.
when it comes to like interstellar confederations and that kind of thing, the
You need a
the
common
idea of
currency of some
exchange,
sort.
yeah, the idea of exchange rate is just a terrible idea. You would need common currencies, but having only one universal common currency is just a huge boat of problems waiting to happen too.
Well, that's more or less what we ended up with, and the reason why it is what it is isn't because all these governments got together and agreed on it. It's the fault of the fucking cyberpaths. They're the ones that the cyberpaths across the fucking galaxy are the ones that keep it somewhat stable. But even then, you go from planet to planet, and it's going to be worth more or less varied on technically the what is it? IPUs, I think it is. It's the industrial production units of the planet. So basically, it's based upon how much the planet's able to produce over the course of a year, or I should say, a rotation. Seeing as what is and isn't a year is not based upon any individual planet, it's based upon Iliante standard. Why? Because they're the ones that are in charge of the information around the galaxy, so they get to make that fucking rule. They're assholes.
Yeah. But either way, when it comes to
And
a universal currency, the value of it is arbitrary. It's basically defined
yeah,
by a conscious like entity. So
well, it's confidence based. Like technically speaking, most currencies are confidence based when you think about it. I mean, the value of things that we think of like silver and gold and diamond and this and that. The only value we have in them is what we've kind of put into them. So it's confidence based. So you almost need to get away from anything that could be used as a currency based on physical material because you could find a fucking planet made of diamond out there or one that's made almost entirely of gold. Well, what's that going to do to the value of gold when people start mining that shit and putting it out there?
finding a planet made entirely of diamond is pretty simple and not that uncommon in the universe. But finding one entirely made of gold would actually be really difficult.
Well, I know because it's a rare mineral. You get the point though of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd
Like,
have to try to figure out what's going to be the rarest thing out there, and I'm not going to have a fucking Mystrium-based currency.
yeah, no, that's a bad idea. But like, if there were a single naturally occurring material to base a currency on, as opposed to having it confidence-based, gold would actually be the most likely element to do it, even on a universal basis, because of not just how it's formed, but how it's amalgamated afterwards. It is actually probably the best material to base it on.
Yeah, but I think it's better to just take it away from there because, as I say, we might find out that in other areas of the universe it's much more common, and all it would take is finding enough out there to just fuck an economy.
Yep.
This is why, in some levels, trying to come up with some kind of stable currency that's not based upon material goods can actually be beneficial when you're looking at it that way. That and how essentially the amount that a planet has in terms of resources, I base upon the production of the planet in terms of
Yeah.
how much they're able to produce with their population and this kind of thing.
But having it confidence based is also a slew
It's
of problems
dangerous.
too. For instance,
Well,
say the
fuck. Look.
Karzan.
Well, hang on. Look, in terms of that being problematic, I mean, we can use freaking Bitcoin as an example, which right now is one Bitcoin is $6,185, and at the end of last year, it was 20 grand. Case in point.
Yep. And even then, that doesn't Bitcoin doesn't even suffer from a lot of the problems of having an entity driven and controlled currency would either.
Yeah.
Because Bitcoin is entirely based on trade and mining. It has no individual organization that can ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I picture it as essentially this collective of all the different cyberpaths out there kind of tugging and pulling this way and that, and it's not enough to actually really change the value too much in one direction or another.
Yeah.
Now,
But
the value of the value
Oh.
of credits fluctuates highly depending on the planet and what have you, but when you're talking about gal creds, that's fucking stable as shit.
Yeah. But if you have a sufficiently powerful group, say
Task Core Information Society, DEF CON, ASC, there's tons of them.
Yeah. What was the
Black
group for that Kalani is a part of?
Oh, that would be the that is Kalani. It's the Kalani Dominion.
Dominion. There we go. The word was escaping me. I'm sure you know the feeling.
It took me a second too, honestly.
Yeah. Say the Dominion had a problem at the higher level with say a bunch of cyberpaths going on strike, and this bred a huge amount of distrust on cyberpaths, and yet cyberpaths are what control the currency. Now, with all this distrust across the entirety of the Dominion, the IPU is no longer something that can be trusted to be valuable.
The value of the credits will get fucked up, but not of the gal creds, because gal creds is galactic. That's spanning the entire galaxy. So you have, every cyberpath effectively everywhere that's tinkering with it at some point or another. So that constant tug of war is going to be going on everywhere. You'd have to get a massive conspiracy amongst massive groups of them, because most of them aren't even necessarily aligned. Cyberpaths are one of the few groups that can actually be essentially free agents, because they're a relative rarity, so they're a valuable commodity in and of themselves. But, so to speak, cornering the market on them, I mean, the only way that anyone could have enough influence to do that would be to, find population population where 1 in 100 is a cyberpath. Yeah, that's going to make an impact, isn't it?
Yeah, the IS is a lot better off because of these weird people that pissed in portals and undead bodies.
Yeah, that's why they came.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Midnight Fellowship's coming. Okay, the Black Church is coming. We don't care. We're going to show up because we have our own interests. Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
We control the technology. We control the money. Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out a way to fucking topple those fuckers.
How many operatives of the IS were there? Because we only met the one.
You'll never know. Here's the thing is that with whatever ship that landed there would have probably been a small contingent of Ilanjani, and you never would have noticed them even with sensors. Ilanjani, for all intents and purposes, don't fucking exist. You can't detect them with pretty damn near anything. Now, there are some ways that they've been found in the past, but it's usually mostly chance. For that matter, in the current story, there is one in the damn story, and the main character keeps almost finding them. The one time that she really fucking spotted them dead on, had them dead to rights, fucking security guards got in her way and she couldn't get to them before they managed to make it around the corner. Essentially, they stopped using their telepathic abilities and she can't see them. But seeing as she can see the flow of energy while they're actively using those abilities, yeah, she can see them, but only barely then. Even she can't quite see them.
I think your mic came loose. You sound really robot-y. Yep.
You sound super robot-y on me. I think it might be your headset this time.
Okay. Might be my interwebs.
I'll re-plug mine for good measure, just in case. Let me redo mine just for good measure.
Let's see if I need to refresh or not. Robot-y on the stream. And my upload speed's fine.
And there we go. That should do it. It didn't reconnect properly the first time around. Yeah, my headset kicks out roughly once a day. It does that. It's part of the nature of the way that this is set up with a wireless and wireless platform. Sometimes it's almost like unpairs itself randomly sometimes. But yeah, we are good to go again. We have 4 whole viewers. Ooh, oh, and hey Blue, how you doing? Feel free to jump in if you want to. The link is out there. We're just kind of spinning our wheels at this point, bullshitting. I mean, if left alone my own devices, ultimately when we talking about Corrales the entire goddamn time. Actually, that was one of the ideas that we floated, because the original title was simply Pathways of Midgard. And we were going to flip that at one point to Tales from Corrales and just have it titled by, like, character name or who the lead is. And if you're going to do, like, book 1 and book 2, that gets really messy, so we ended up just going to something else. But we went through several working titles over the course of this, but the original was The Pathways of Midgard, and I really was wanting to keep that as the series name. Even if it's something that could be problematic in that people assume I mean Midgard from Norse myth, which I don't.
Could have been worse. Could have been Pathway to Yggdrasil.
Actually, that might have worked. There is actually, both in the prophecy as well as within Corrales, a tree that is essentially one of the characters who shows up in book 1 and reappears in book 3. He basically uses this tree that he prunes and what have you to track the passage of time. And I almost want to call it a fuzzy tree, because in some ways it's almost like a willow in that you have the stalk that comes up and all these branches that come down. But in this case, it's more bush-like in that they tend to connect. And he uses this as a visual to essentially understand the passage of time, because he can see time. He's a fucking oracle. And what he'll do is he basically braids the different branches together and splices them, what have you. How you can get 2 branches to grow together. And he's been doing this for a long fucking time at this point, and he uses this as a visual way to track past, present, future, etc. So every once in a while, something will happen that he'll have to take out a fucking hatchet and hack a branch off the fucking thing. But his whole thing is trying to prune things so he can try to figure out where things are going to end and try to direct things that way. And that kind of be my Yggdrasil. Nah, I can't fucking say Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil, yeah. Dog's barking at something. Be right back.
Yep. I see a thumping stick.
Machete, close enough though.
I used to have one of those around here. Granted, yours looks a little rusty.
Yeah, it's very rusty.
I have to worry about things like rats and vermin and whatever. Yeah, I fucking hate rats.
Oh no, the machete's more for someone trying to get on the property.
But yeah, there's
what is out there?
One of the races in Corrales are the Rakashan, which are evolved from essentially rats, and they're these big fucking sewer-dwelling 2-headed rats. I fucking hate them. That's part of why I threw one in there, to be the collateral damage, the thing she kills by mistake, because I fucking hate rats. Always have, always will. I don't even know why. Never have.
Because there's too much work to get all the fur and skin off to make them tasty?
Possibly. I don't know. I couldn't even venture a guess at this point. It's just, it was actually a phobia when I was younger. Now it's just, I just can't stand them, but it used to be an all-out phobia. There was one point that I think it was with my brother or something, and we were looking at cars in a car lot, and this rat runs across beneath 2 cars, and I damn near screamed like a little girl and climbed on a trunk.
But you're perfectly fine handling squirrels.
Oh, I don't handle squirrels. I just handle squirrel puppets. Well, okay, the baby squirrels, that's a different case entirely, you know. But yeah. Squirrels aren't, it's just rats specifically. I don't know, man. I mean, you know, you show me like a field mouse or whatever, and I don't like them, but they were never a big deal. But yeah, rats were my thing. Oh god, that, you know, you do the Indiana Jones thing, and it's like, oh gee, look, it's fucking snakes. Who gives a shit? Rats? No.
That makes it kind of weird. If you hate rats so much and have this like internal hatred for them, Why did you sacrifice birds instead?
Because I couldn't catch the little fuckers and I didn't want to get near them.
Okay.
The birds I could catch. I mean, there was a bridge that you could go under, and just the pigeons were stupid and trustworthy, and they were easy to catch.
Yeah.
That and I feel awkward saying this online. It's hard to get a pigeon to bleed. And
Yeah,
that was the
that's
thing
actually
is,
pretty true.
once the guy that was the number 2 in the weird little cult that I'd started brought something that bled, that was kind of game over for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
what he brought was it a cat, I believe, and then how the whole
I never stated what kind of animal it was, and I did that for a reason. I refused to state what kind of animal it actually was, but yeah, it bled and bled a lot, and that was game over for me. But the pigeons never actually bled. I mean, you could pull their goddamn heads off, and I'd never see a drop of blood. You just see this little bit of spine hanging out of the top of their neck, dangling back and forth, swaying ever so slightly from the force of the head being. I shouldn't get into it too far. My writing instinct's kicking in. But yeah, it was pretty fucking bad. I mean, I'm glad I got the help that I needed when I was a kid. But yeah, the thing that led to the feathers never fur is the blood from said furry little animal. That was a step too far. That was too much. But with the pigeons, I mean, some I don't know. I swear the things are bloodless. I don't know, man. I think we got like blood out of a pigeon once out of I don't know how many pigeons we went through. God, I don't even want to go down that road. It's a long time ago.
Not enough to discover cosmic microwave background radiation. That's all that matters.
I don't know. I think we might have discovered some of them that day that we had managed to not actually catch one, but walked in the middle of the street and some guy in a sports car sped up, and we had feathers flying for I don't know about 15 feet behind the car once they got their tire on it. I don't know. There might have been some microwave background radiation in all those feathers. Hell, there's so many of them. There could have been. Of course, not that we could see it, but still. Not the greatest joke, but I will run with it for the moment. We still have probably the same 4 viewers. I don't know. Maybe they're European and hoping to go to sleep to the sound. I don't know. I know I'm not being all that entertaining today, but I'm having to recenter myself so I can get the fuck back to work at some point today, which I'll end up doing. But we'll see. The problem is having the character improvise in a way that makes sense within the narrative. Now, I know what could theoretically be done in terms of her power set, but she doesn't. And it needs to be something that would occur to her. Oh, this is tricky. I don't know, man. We will figure this shit out.
Getting herself into a better position has to be the first thing she does, no matter what strategy she takes.
Well, the problem is, at this particular point, okay.
So right now, that's a perfectly fine spot for the E2 Thelu to be in, because for dance fighting, but for anyone else...
Well, she might have a little bit of that. We'll just say she might have a touch of that element. But she's quick, she's agile, she's a little bit of the Dex monkey, but there's 2 big problems. One of which is that she has to maintain physical contact with Shinji at this point, because she's redirecting an attempt to use mental paralysis on her into him, so his mind's trapped for the moment. So she has to maintain physical contact with him. The secondary problem is that this is shortly after a scene in which she went to visit an armor shop and got equipment that's not so much to protect, but to deceive. She's going to be going in one of the upcoming chapters. She's going to be going off to fight this big fucking racist serpentine motherfucker. And she made a point of getting pants that, while they are not as protective as some other forms of gear, look like his scales. That and essentially a fur top bikini to make herself look like as little of a threat while still offending him as possible. That way she can be confident that he'll underestimate her, which will give her an advantage in combat. But unfortunately, she's currently still wearing that, so she's wearing essentially crap armor and about to get into a major confrontation. But luckily for her, having 2 consciousnesses inside of her, she does have some advantages they don't know about. Especially because these are agents from PRI, and they expected her former patient number to work on her as a control command. So they thought they were going to be able to go, just issue the control command from PRI, take control of her, and leave. They weren't expecting a fucking fight. And they're trying to take her alive using these commands. And that's another little advantage she has, because they have no fucking clue that she went under surgery before and had the wetware removed from her skull.
I don't know, if they want her alive, that gives her another good bit of advantage, too.
Yeah. But the question is, how much of this is a scenario that they're potentially creating in her head, and how much of it is actually happening?
Mm.
So some of those potential opponents might not even exist. It's a bizarre fucking situation. This is what happens when you start writing things with, telepathy and mental powers and this kind of stuff, is that there's so many possibilities. And a lot of people, when they write it, and I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own fucking horn, but a lot of people, when they write this kind of stuff, and I think this part comes in part from me, a lot of these stories evolving out of role-playing games I used to run, is that when you're doing something with like mental abilities and this and that, you'll have that they use this ability and then they never fucking use it again, because either the author doesn't think of it or they forget about it. And at the same point, nobody ever uses the ability against them, even though they might be able to have it as well. So it's just something that's usually left by the wayside. But due
like
to the fact
Apocalypse
that,
in the X-Men movie, using the sand thing to cut off people's head and then never
Yeah, exactly. If you have an ability, you have a fucking ability. And when I'm essentially writing out the character sheets, because I basically do them as if they're role-playing characters, I try to get all that on there so I know what they're capable of. And I try sometimes, as I was showing you earlier with Roll20, I'll stage things out there to actually track the combat, because you don't want to see, like, okay, so they're having to fight 5 people and 3 of them do nothing until, oh wait, no, now they do something. Oh wait, but they never do it again.
Yeah.
Just that kind of stuff.
The sheer fact that the Kimseti is in this situation tells me that Kimseti's probably experienced in fighting, right?
Oh yeah, well, the Kimseti is there for aerial support. Ultimately, that's the only one that most of them are not going to be doing what it's doing, because its whole thing is get it to go up in the air to try to play sniper in case there's a problem.
Well, the reason I asked is because if he's experienced, or if it's experienced rather, it knows its own advantages and disadvantages, and if she grabs Shinji under her arm and charges at the Kimseti is most likely going to take flight as opposed to trying to fight on the ground.
Yeah, quite possibly, but it might get Jad to shut off first. The question of what its instant reaction roll is, right? Game reference.
Right, but no, seriously though, if she charges that way and he takes flight, she now has a much better position just from that alone, and she could do that without taking a hit from the Mungani because she's about 15 feet away still.
Dude, you're hyper-focused on that Mungani, man.
Because it's that close, and Munganis are physically a threat.
Oh yeah, they're fairly decent, but yeah, she's. The thing is, I'm going to convey this all in game terms. She has enhanced bone density and dense musculature. So that gives her the strength bonus and makes her a lot more durable.
Well, I'm not worried about the Mongoli actually severely injuring her so much as disabling her, grappling her.
Yeah.
Because they are very able to do that.
Yeah, that is definitely a possibility. I'd be a little bit more worried about the frickin' lizard for that one, the Gorgalian.
Yeah, but he's far enough away to not be the immediate threat during the start of combat.
Yeah, he is further away indeed, but the trick is that the Mungani, while strong, would be closer to. He wouldn't necessarily. He's not strong enough to be able to overpower her that easily. The Gorgalian, on the other hand, easily. We're talking roughly. He's not simply on par with her strength. He's far superior.
Well, we'll say for the sake of argument, if the Mungani and her got in a one-on-one fight, she'd have him beat in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That still means that everyone else in the group has 30 seconds to get to her while she's dealing with him.
That's true.
That's the problem. True. So her first problem here is positioning, and she needs to fix that before anything else, and she has to worry about what would delay her from getting an advantageous position, and the Mungani is the biggest threat to that exact part.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is that the little green dude, the Udbar, he's actually there he's just there to defend the Soul Mage.
Yeah.
The soul mages, especially if they're connected with a council, always are sent out with a defender.
Yeah, and Udbars aren't exactly the most advanced or politically minded people to send to anything, so it's kind of obvious that he's a bodyguard.
Yeah, being cannibals and whatnot, yeah. You just have to worry about them biting you. You look tasty, chomp chomp. Actually, I don't know. I have a little bit of a gag out of that with her being accused of being racist or prejudiced technically for referring to them as cannibals at one point, I believe. They're known for it, but that was years ago. Oh, we're not like that now.
We don't eat each other.
Well, that's kind of the fun thing about them. They ate them because the planet they landed on didn't have very good food sources, so they ended up having to kind of eat their own. Kind of shit.
They're just keeping it in the family.
Oh, new meaning to that one. Holy crap. Baby eating, they're tender. Ugh.
Well, no, I mean, in African cannibal tribes, the spiritual thing behind it was that you did eat your relatives, and their essence was passed on and kept in the family.
Unfortunately, the Udbar don't have that excuse.
While when it comes to, say, the Donner Party, they had a different moral foundation.
Yep.
They specifically would label the meat of the people that were being eaten so that you didn't have to eat your relatives. So it kind of depends on what the background is and whether they would be keeping it in the family or not.
Yeah, I don't know, man. In their case, it was more so eating people that you don't like. But it was also usually more of initially a tribal kind of thing that, if somebody would die, they'd all kind of partake. They'd make a stew. It was fucked up shit. But what do you expect from people that evolved from politicians, Not entirely a joke in terms of the lore, but there's a good portion of the lore that's really very kind of tongue-in-cheek, more joke than necessarily made to be taken completely serious. Because, Douglas Adams was an influence. Granted, there are other societies that were kind of framed around, well, if people are going to be making these kind of arguments, how can we kind of turn that on their head? One of them being this whole stupid, think about the children kind of thing with abortion. You couldn't possibly have a society in which they kill their young and still survive. Let's invent one. That'd be the childlike. They destroy the first hatchling of every clutch. Because it is a fucking sociopath. Actually, beyond.
I mean, we also have historical ones that would kill children, either the firstborn or with any obvious physical deformities, like Athens. If you had a physical deformity in your baby, it was normal and expected that you would throw it off a cliff.
In their case, I wanted to make it so there was an absolute necessity that there'd be dire consequences if they didn't. And in this particular case, the first member of every clutch is technically a subspecies.
Yep. Yeah, it defends the nest from the things that like to do.
It has to protect him from Talgardon, but after it's done with that purpose, if you let it live too long, it'll start killing its siblings.
Mm-hmm. And then civil rights people come around, and yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a subplot with that shows up in book 2. Thelu's sister, actually. Silly little thing went to try to protect the babies, and yeah, she's being used. She's a shield to try to keep that little, essentially terrorist cell alive, because they put her out in front of them, so to speak, and like, go ahead, shoot her. That's not quite accurate, but yeah, it's just me fucking around. But yeah, she's in a bad position and doesn't even fucking know that she's essentially being used to technically keep her sister loyal to Corbigiani, even though he's a miserable racist fuck. I'm really looking forward to killing him. The original scene that was written for 3 is going to be getting a little bit of a rewrite, to say the least, as well as some of the lead up to it. But yeah, Corbigiani's arrogance is ultimately what his undoing was. Because he's like really just insanely well talented and trained as far as Shadow Knights go. Massive Kobatom schnack. And has a long track record, has been doing it for a long fucking time. So basically the only way to best him is to get him to really underestimate you and think that you're not a threat, and then fuck his world up. Or at least that's the tact that's used. Well, that and having the tails helped. Hey, we have 5 viewers, and I'm still just bullshitting about the world and the book and the old games and yada yada yada. Does anybody have a fucking topic that wants to come in here to get me off this shit? Please? Oh well. I mean, that's kind of thing is, a lot of people will sit there and go on and on about how hard it is to do world building, and I spent fucking years doing this shit. And I'd like to think it's at the point that most questions I can answer at this point. Although, truth be known, there are still a couple species in my own fucking universe that I don't know much of shit about because I haven't had to. Matter of fact, there's a reference in Book 2 regarding the Dayreth. The Dayreth, incidentally, was a race that I never really necessarily intended on creating. I basically set things up so that you had the Darians, who have my lovely little joke about the blue sun, and you had the Shempharians, which were the only ones that really successfully went to the stars. And these are Shempharians in part because the Lomentics needed somebody to fuck. After I came up with those were pretty much the only humanoid races. Everything else was alien. And so the first people that started playing the game came into a universe in which anything that was even human-like was a massive minority. They were dealing almost entirely with aliens, and even then the predominant life forms were the fucking colmians, those squiddy-looking motherfuckers. Or I should say octopus-looking motherfuckers, essentially. And there was a certain novelty, I guess, in humans being the minority in the universe. That's changed over the years, and part of it has to do with when you're trying to publish, people identify more with people, so you have to incorporate more of them into your story. It just prevents a certain level of disconnection that you run into with people, and this is why, unfortunately, you don't see too many stories that are major vantage point from some fucking alien. Granted, Thanos being essentially the main character of Infinity War gave me a little bit of hope, because it's really kind of his story. Now, he's not too alien, but he's still technically an alien, so it's a start. I mean, I'd love to see a movie that was like, like a Predator movie or what have you, something along those lines, that the Predator was the main character. And in one of the AVP movies, they kind of tried to do that, but then they focused too much on the goddamn humans and took away from the story because they didn't have the balls to actually follow through. And I kind of wish that they had, because I think that might have made for a more interesting story, but instead they done fucked it up by making it about rednecks in the woods trying to do their shit. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know, that's a thing. But the players really loved it initially, and I've just slowly shifted it as things have changed in Corrales. The Colmians are gone. They just fucking left one day. Nobody knows what the hell happened to them. I do, but in the world or in the books, I'm never going to actually reveal it because it's okay. There's two reasons why they're gone. I'll do it there. I'll do it. Fuck it. Okay, there's two primary reasons why they're gone. One of which is I staged the entire universe in a game called Anacreon back in the day. And in order to add a new empire, you need to get rid of one. Because it only allowed at the time, with the way that it was set up, you could only have 8 empires. And there was a new one that I needed to bring in, basically grab a chunk. And that and the Colmians, I get kind of tired of them as a species, frankly. So I decided to get rid of them. So in reality, I just said, fuck it, they're gone. We're going to move this empire that we need to make a major player now up and just give them that space that used to be the Colmians. So in reality, that's what happened. But in terms of creating a reason within the universe, I've kind of come up with one, but I don't know how satisfying it is. They were originally from Biara. They went home. Yeah, it's not the most satisfying.
Using that as a reason means you have to have a reason for them to have come here, and that reason has to have been resolved back at home too.
Well, it'd be more along the lines of they fucking escaped, and eventually Piara found out where they went.
Then they wouldn't be going home; they'd go somewhere else because the Biara would go
Biara would basically, Biara is a biological realm, so they would have found a way to punch a hole through and send through antibodies essentially to drag them back home and kill them. So they could be reabsorbed into the organism. But yeah, it's still not very satisfying, which is why I'm never technically going to reveal it properly in the books and what have you, because I'll have to come up with a much better reason for them vanishing than that. A plague or some shit like that, I guess, would work. But the thing is, when the Fellowship was founded, it was the children of Eddic fleeing from the territories that they owned, and they ended up there, and they found these abandoned cities and founded the Midnight Fellowship there.
Just don't do a War of the Worlds thing where they fucking died to a random pathogen on another planet that they just couldn't handle, even though they can handle interstellar fucking travel.
Well, actually, back in the day, they dealt with that kind of thing. They were damn near wiped out at one point after making contact with one species, there was a fucking pathogen that they couldn't fucking manage with, and it wiped out damn near 2/3 of their population. It did not kill them, though. It wiped out a lot of them. They eventually found a solution, as you do. But there have been several different plagues over the course of history along those lines. But most of the, if you have a sufficiently advanced culture, they will find a way to overcome it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but once it comes to the point where these are a species that goes from planet to planet and interacts with sentient race after sentient race, to be able to even do that, they have to have already found some kind of solution to pathogen infection. Otherwise, they're just dooming themselves. They wouldn't make it that far. They wouldn't be in.
Well, okay. There's decon procedures and all this other fun stuff, but at the same point, there's always when you're investigating new planets or what have you, going to be pathogens that you can't necessarily plan for. Yeah, so there is a threat of that, but this is why you don't have the people that go down to those fucking planets return to your goddamn homeworld. Oh. Now, you can also argue that there must be a point in a species' history that they learned this foul lesson, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's before they become an empire, generally. Yeah. You can't be this huge power over all these different planets of sentient people and not have some kind of, like, either nanotechnology that can destroy the pathogens or something like that.
No, dude, we're talking about Colmians. Colmians deal with Colmians. They are not as active with other races. They're a little bit more xenophobic than that. But even then, you'd be more likely for somebody on a remote planet to get an illness and get killed from it, and not the homeworld itself or something like that, not one of the main planets, because their colonies are kind of closed off to most outsiders, and decontamination procedure would be absolutely fucking ludicrous.
Now, say, for instance, the Colmians had a nanotechnological solution to pathogens that just destroyed foreign elements that entered the body, or something like that, something simple that would solve the problem. And then they come to a little moon that 1 in 100 people are cyberpaths, and they end up at war with them.
Oh, you're fucked.
So much for those nanotechnologies. They're now destroying your body.
I don't know. I could almost write this off as they were a little bit too close to the Lamentic High World's. High Court's homeworld. There we go. Yep. Now we got our words separated properly. It could almost be something as simple as that, but no, I'm not going that way either. I'm going to leave it a mystery, and I'll figure it out later, because I don't fucking know, honestly. I just know what the actual reason why I got rid of them was.
Yeah, when you come across an organization that can use your technology to kill you when you're trying to use it to kill them, then there's a problem. That's why the Information Society you're just lucky they're not Imperial, because they can destroy all of you.
Well, I mean, Book 3, it's implied that the Servanis, our rival, was part of what got rid of them. But how that would have any effect on it is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. So I think it's just a boast by the Servani that made the comment. It's more like they took credit for it.
Yeah, well, that's pretty normal. That's actually been used by a lot of imperial monarchs throughout history, to take these stories of events that happen and claim credit for them, just to have that reputation.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. It's a thing.
Like, I think Attila the Hun was one of the people that would abuse that.
Yeah, I mean, propaganda goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, so yeah, quite possibly. Not that somebody wouldn't have thought of it if it wasn't for ancient Egypt. I'm not necessarily calling that a source, but we know in terms of actual records that we've seen, there was a battle with the Hittites, I believe it was. The Hittites at the time were an Iron Age society, In Egypt, they were still Bronze Age. Hittites handed them their fucking asses. Egypt came back after massive fucking losses and on all these obelisks, I guess, that they would engrave their war record on, and essentially they did propaganda on there, saying that, oh, there was this great battle and so many Egyptians had fallen, and then the pharaohs stood up and started hurling fireballs at the Hittites, killing them by the thousand, and bullshit like that. It's like, yeah, we know this is propaganda. This is bullshit. I mean, you're taking a Trump supporter to believe that kind of nonsense, right? But yeah, so that's the earliest known instance of propaganda, and is pretty fucking blatant. But it was effective in that when the Hittites tried to mobilize an army to go after Egypt even more, a lot of their soldiers were like, we're not fighting somebody that can throw fireballs at us. What are you, fucking nuts? Because people are stupid. But yeah, the Colmians, technically speaking, I don't know what the hell happened to them, but Colmians have done some pretty fucking dumb shit first. They were one of the first races that tried to develop actual straight-up light-speed travel. They were trying to figure out how to drive faster than the speed of light, and they hadn't come up with a technique to make it so that the people were not moving at that speed.
Actually had
so the ship sped up to the point that the faster the ship went, the closer it got to the speed of light, the slower they moved until it finally hit light speed, at which point they just stopped.
Actually had an interesting conversation last night with a bunch of Australians and a couple of Brits about the previous election in 2016. And I think I summed it up rather well, where we had three choices to choose from. We had Bernie, who would say that white people don't know what it's like to be poor. We had Hillary, who said video games are evil. We need to put boots on the ground in Russia. And then we had Trump going, "Duh, climate change don't real."
Yeah. wait, who's the Green Party one? Let's throw her the fuck in there with her whole anti-vax shit.
Yeah, that's... She wasn't one of the primary choices, though.
Oh, but she was so fucking funny, because what would happen is she'd be sitting there and giving one of her little speeches, and some conspiracy wacko would pop up with something, and because she was like, okay, this person might vote for me, I don't want to alienate them, I'll just kind of agree with every bullshit they say, and that was just such a dumb move on her part.
But when it comes to boots on the ground in Russia, or all white people are spoiled, or climate change don't real, to quote the Australian, I guess we got the lesser of the three evils.
I don't know about that, man. I don't know. I mean, that was just an offhand comment, and it was kind of, it wasn't what he was trying to convey, it was just kind of badly phrased.
Yeah.
And I heard it, I'm like, you done fucked up. That's not how you want to phrase that, dude. But, you know, this is what happens during debates, is you say one thing while thinking you're trying to say something else, or not really conveying your meaning. It's going to happen.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that I'm going to give Jordan Peterson a break because he's a fucking piss poor communicator. I mean, some of the stuff he's gone on about, it's like, dude, do you even think about what you're fucking saying? My favorite being his whole claim that everyone should be forced to be celibate, essentially.
He's...
Oh, sorry, monogamous, not celibate. Everyone should essentially be forced to be monogamous, and his logic was that way there'll be enough women to go around. You know, because you have that one guy that gets all the girls, and if they're forced and shunned into being monogamous, then that guy only ends up with one girl, and that frees up the women for the other guys. And I'm like, okay, so you're kind of going for this weird, like, zero-sum game kind of thing, so that women end up with the guys that are just completely undesirable and are doing nothing to better themselves. Okay, great philosophy. How about you just encourage everyone to be slutty and non-monogamous? That way you don't have to worry about who has who.
Not to mention, 51% of the human population on the world is female, so if everyone was forced to be monogamous, that's a large portion of women that just don't get anyone.
Yeah, but his little speeches and books are kind of catered to those guys that can't understand why girls don't like me. Come here while I hit you again. Or will I treat you like shit and ignore you while I play my video games, or whatever, you know. It's just, it's kind of going to the, in some ways, the worst of the worst. It's like you're a fucking douche with no redeeming qualities. You don't fucking bathe, and you're wondering why women aren't interested in you. I wonder.
I don't understand why people have this incessant need for validation of someone else. I don't get it. Maybe I'm the one that's fucked up in the head. I
Well,
don't know,
we're
but I just
talking
don't get
about
it.
the incel sort, these people that they're involuntarily celibate, meaning that women aren't interested in them, and they don't stop to wonder why. Instead, they read these like pickup artist books and this kind of shit and think that that's going to help them. It's like,
Well, I
why
mean,
don't you develop a personality first?
right? Well, yeah, incels have their own problems, but even when whether you're including them or you're just looking at the general population at all, I just don't understand this need for validation.
Well, it's not validation they're after; it's attention from the
That's
ones that
essentially
they're
what I
interested
mean.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's essentially what I mean, though.
I guess
Is
it's
having
validation.
for another person to be in your life. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, they just want companionship that doesn't consist of their own hand. I mean, that's kind of ultimately it, and I don't get it. I mean, there's always that comment of, well, there's somebody out there for everyone, and on some levels, I
No,
think
there's
there's
not.
multiple somebodies out there for just about everyone. But the question is, you have to make yourself worthy of the attention.
For the sake of argument, we'll say yes, there is someone out there for you. Now, why aren't you that person for them?
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way of framing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of folks that don't, like I said, don't want to do anything to better themselves. They don't want to, okay, so you're sitting there and you're playing Call of Duty. We'll just pick on that one for the hell of it. You're playing Call of Duty all hours of the day and night, not paying any attention to some girl that you met that you're trying to woo, and you're wondering why she's not wanting to pay attention to you. I wonder. Could it be? Nah, it couldn't be that.
Could it be Satan?
Could it be Call of Duty? What? And that's not to paint the picture of, like somebody sitting there just necessarily even hating the game, but we're talking about some of these people that get so obsessed with whatever the fuck that they don't pay attention. I mean, back when I met my wife, there was one point I was sitting down playing a game, and she walks into the room stark naked, and I'm like, "Hey, hon, I'll be right there. Just let me save." And she laughed, and she's like, "No, you don't have to. I'm not actually in the mood." I'm like, "Then why do you come in here naked?" She's like, "Well, I just was testing you to make sure that if I walked by you naked, you wouldn't keep playing the game." I'm like, "Oh, you're naked. We're going now." I chased her into the room. Yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. But how many people failed that test? And this is why she did that, is because she had an ex years earlier that she could have paraded through naked, and he wouldn't have even bothered to look up at her.
That reminds me of this girl Mara. I know her boyfriend was a. This was when the World of Warcraft fandom was at its worst. So this was a good 10, 15 years ago, something like that. I don't remember. But Mara messages her boyfriend, says, "Can you come over? I'm bored and horny." His response was, "Can this wait an hour? I have a guild event."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there goes the mood for the next month. You're done.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of you must drop everything for your partner, I think, is a little bit bullshit, too, because people do have their own lives, and they should, rightfully so. It makes, you have to allow your partner to have their own existence, their own life, their own autonomy outside of you. But at the same point, when they're sitting there literally saying, "Come give me attention," acknowledge it. I mean, it's like, "Listen, I've got this thing going in an hour. I've been planning this for a couple of weeks. If you need me, I'll be there. But there are people depending on me, and hash it out, talk, have a fucking discussion, not just, I got a guild event for the next." Oh, wait a minute. At that point, they feel like they're not worth as much as this thing that you're going to be doing.
Yep.
Especially if they don't play the game and they don't get the frame of reference. I mean, my wife very quickly learned what a save point was.
Mm-hmm.
So she'd walk into the room and she's like, "Are you at a good breaking point?" And I'm like, "Hang on, give me 2 minutes." And she'd be like, "Okay, I'll see you in 2 minutes."
Yep.
Because she knew that, okay, I need to be able to save. Just give me that moment. I don't want to completely lose everything. And you come to this kind of equilibrium with a partner. But when you're early into the relationship, don't even bother waiting for the fucking equilibrium. They want your attention, you fucking give it to them. You have to build that scaffolding before you can start compromising.
You know,
to
and I
show their
completely
value.
understand and agree with the idea of if you have this thing that has 60 people that are needed, you have to schedule with all 60 people to do this thing, and all 60 people are relying on each other, that, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. But if they don't understand and know that, then...
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this is the thing, is a lot of people will sit there and they have, we'll just say they have a little bit of an existence or a world outside of the one they're involved with. Let them in enough that they can understand and have a frame of reference.
Mhm.
Now, in terms of my wife, I was working on the book and trying to get people to help me do some editing back when I first met her, so she signed on for the writing, so to
Yeah.
speak. And before we even started really getting together, she to this day will sit there and make the comment that it was my writing she fell in love with first. And the funny thing is, I do not take that as being offensive. I take that as a compliment. So, but that's because of the whole writing thing is such a ridiculously monumental part of who I am, to the point of, damn near obsession at times, that I'll sit here in a fucking hangout talking for however many fucking hours this has been, mostly about the goddamn writing in my universe and this kind of crap, instead of about things that actually fucking matter. But at the same point, she looks at it as, ooh, he's telling me a story. Yay! Which also, in some ways, makes her one of the worst pre-readers that I could possibly have, because she knows so much extra stuff about the universe and the characters in it and all this other stuff, that not only can she correct me sometimes, but she's familiar enough about them that when I don't explain something well enough, she might not catch it, because she already understands the world well enough that her brain's filling in what the reader wouldn't know. So that's kind of a thing. We ran into that problem, I think, twice. Yeah, over the course of working on the book. There's 2 times I can think of. One of them was a scene that she read and looked perfectly fine. And the first editor was like, what the fuck is this? Literally, the comment, I think, was, fuckity fuck fuck, what the fuck is this? And I looked at it, I'm like, it makes perfect sense. And I explained it to her, and she's like, well, why don't you have any of that explanation on the page? I'm like, I don't. She's like, no, none of it. I'm like, ah, shit. So I had to go back in there and fix that. Made perfect sense to me, but there was something key that I hadn't explained. It was actually having to do with Lorik, for that matter. I had forgot to mention what the Mercantile Marines are.
Ah.
Yeah, it's basically a privateer / pirate, loose alliance of traders and what have you. And I kind of forgot to explain what it was. It was just put in there as a throwaway, and nothing pertaining to it made any fucking sense because I forgot to explain what the fuck it was.
It's like, Alibaba's coming, so who the fuck cares? Well, he's got 40 feet. Wait, what?
Yeah. Oops. Done fucked up.
It's like Paul Revere running down the street. There's a boat coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so what?
Yeah, you have to explain why it actually means anything to anyone. It's kind of important. And I did something along those lines twice. And now, granted, I also at one point got into a conversation with some folks, and they were sitting there talking about info dumps. And I'm like, yeah, I've got an info dump too in my end, I have to admit, but I think they work out well enough that they're not too bad. And they're like, well, like, what are you talking about? And this was a place with other writers and this kind of stuff, and we are comparing notes on things. And I put one up there like, that's plot related. That's not info dump. That's important explanation that you need in there. I'm like, yeah, but it's still an info dump. It's a long fucking section. I could have broken up the explanation more.
Yeah, exposition is exposition, but sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, sometimes the exposition comes and smacks you upside the head with her little fucking magic wand, and sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it's tiresome.
As long as you don't break flow and break the immersion to get the exposition across, it's fine.
Yeah, well, sometimes I do a little bit, but this is why I have the narrator's voice pop in here and there. Yeah. But the narrator's voice, I would tend to think, is something that people get used to, because it's actually narrated as well as I can through the voice of the main character.
Yeah. For me, though, particularly, I just want to get this thought out before I forget it. Particularly when it comes to exposition, if you have a character explaining something to another character that other character should already know, you're doing it wrong. Oh, no, this character, she's basically just, she's... more so, I'd like to say that she's explaining it to the reader to a degree, almost directly.
but it's in her voice, and it's just kind of this matter of fact, like, oh, you know, there's a reason why people don't actually read the core of people's minds. Or for that matter, they don't read the minds of anyone without surface thoughts because, and then it goes into this explanation of cyberpaths and how if you try to go too deep into a cyberpath's mind, it'll break you because of how rapidly they think. But it introduces the concept of cyberpaths, what they are, and why if somebody doesn't have surface thoughts, just telepaths stay the fuck away from them as a general rule. So all these things are needed and are explained, but it's her basically just, it's pitched almost as if it's her remembering a lesson that she was taught back when she was at PRI. So she's just remembering these lessons. And in that sense, you know, it's used technically in terms of the way that I generally put it in there as ways to pass time. So, you know, you're traveling from point A to point B, so she's just musing about whatever the hell, something's coming to mind, and at this point she almost talks to the audience in a manner of speaking, to let them know what's going on. This is how I throw those little things in there. Mm-hmm. But it's to pass time. They're going from point A to point B. It's going to take some time. So we'll tell you about this while they're traveling. And that's just kind of the way I look at it. That way, you're not sitting there doing it in some ridiculous conversation, which the other person should know it anyway. You're just cluing in the reader in almost a narrator style, using the POV of the main character and her voice, which is a little snarky at times.
But as long as it doesn't come across as explaining to a Colmian what a tentacle is.
Oh, God, no. No. Certainly not. We have to have our tentacles.
You don't have an information society lieutenant telling a corporal what a cyberpath is, you know?
Oh, fuck
no. They fucking know what a cyberpath is. They're in the information society, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you live in this universe, you know this shit.
Yeah.
But at the same point, you have to have a way to explain things to the audience. So you have to have a little bit of that narrator's voice. Now, the idea is to not take people out of immersion too much, but more of that the story's paused. I'm going to explain this. Okay, go ahead. Back to the story. And I'd like to think that the voice is differentiated enough that it works. But this is kind of the thing is that if you introduce a concept in one book, you can either do what a lot of folks do, which is just say, okay, sure, fine, I'm going to assume they've read book one and I'm not going to do anything. Or you can kind of revisit it in the later ones to let people know again. Because I'm not going to expect everyone to be you, not Vic. I'm not going to expect them to remember, okay, sure, fine, on page 73, whatever, random page of book one, we actually introduced a Pache. And I'm going to expect you to remember that one reference that was one fucking scene in book 8, I don't know, you know, some other fucking volume. It doesn't matter which one. Because you can't rely on people to remember every fine little fucking detail.
Yeah, my sheer level of autism gets in the way of letting details like that go.
But, you know, you don't sit there and say, you know, it was such and such, and sit there and describe the fucking thing or whatever, and then do the, you're a such and such, aren't you? Yeah, it's a little much, too.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get away with it at times that you give the description and you pause and it's like, oh, I haven't seen a Pache in a while. Huh. Yeah, and then it's matter of fact and it's fine.
If you have a flighty enough character, you can get away with that. Oh, you're a Pache. I've met one of you before.
Oh, can I pet you? Get the fuck away from me.
Yep. But that's that doesn't make for a good main character.
Well, no, especially with the way I tend to. I don't think I've ever written a. Book one, there's just an offhand reference. There's actually isn't one actually directly in it. But if you take this, if you take the series as a whole, I don't think. I mean, even Lorik's story has one. Almost every role-playing game they show up at some point, but there's inevitably always going to be at least one Flanix.
Do you remember the Elcor from Mass Effect?
No.
So the Elcor are these big four-legged creatures, super intelligent, really slow moving and slow talking, but they mostly communicate with each other through little twitches that are too small for most races to notice, and through smells and just these non-communicative things as we see it. And because of that, when they are communicating with other races, they utilize speech, but they don't convey emotions with their speech. So to overcome that as a race, they've gotten into this habit of expressing their actual emotion at the end of their statements. Like, you should totally buy this in sincere endorsement kind of thing. And there's this great Easter egg in Mass Effect 3.
So they actually state they state it up. Okay.
Yes, there's this great scene. If you're walking through the Citadel in Mass Effect, I don't remember if it's 2 or 3, but I'm pretty sure it's in Mass Effect 3. There's a commercial that comes on to the screens. If you stand there and watch the screens long enough, they play these commercials, and one of them is for all of Shakespeare's work with an all Elcor cast. It's an incredible, unforgettable 14-hour experience. And I just remembering that and what you were just talking about, and the flighty characters, I just had the worst possible thought. The Odyssey from the eyes of the Cheshire.
Oh my God, no! Just say no. And of course, I'm at that point that I'm talking again, and the audience has no idea what I'm talking about. The Cheshire essentially are a race, an anthropomorphic race that started off as house cats. You're talking about a sentient race with the personality of a house cat and as well as the attention span. They're the ones that if you were playing let's just say a role-playing game situation, you're walking down the street, there's a bunch of people that are about to attack you. The entire party gets in combat. At the end of it, you realize that the entire time you were fighting, the reason why you didn't see the Cheshire is because they saw something shiny in a window and have been standing there the entire time while your group's been being killed, staring at something shiny through a window. Which just might be the way the light's reflecting off the window for all it matters.
Sorry, I was remembering it wrong. They state their emotion at the beginning of the sentence.
Oh, okay. Actually, that reminds me of Railgun. To a degree. Do you remember in Railgun when they brought in one of the clone characters that basically would always add the inflection, so to speak, to the end of her statement? You know, she said angrily.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was sitting there watching that at one point with my wife in the room. She's like, I fucking hate this. I wish they'd stop doing that. That is so fucking obnoxious. I'm like, I love it. She's like, you fucking writers. What the hell's the matter with you?
Right.
It's annoying.
I was actually watching this collab video of this PhD biologist that works in a chem lab, and this PhD physicist that teaches, she's a college teacher or something like that, and they were discussing these claims being made by a flat earther, which none of the actual conversation is relevant to the point, but this PhD physicist that professionally teaches in a university physics kept putting that inflection on the end of her sentences, and I just couldn't take anything she said seriously. It's like she's stating these very true facts, and she's very obviously really well educated on the subject, but I can't take anything she says seriously.
But yeah, I personally, I love, as a writer, I fucking thought that part was hilarious. I loved it, and my wife's just like, I'm going to kill you if you don't put something else on. This is irritating the snot out of me. Yeah, it was fun. But anyway, but yeah, I do have one species that, the Chirons actually, because they wear the full body armor, always, because it's just a racial quirk. And there's reasoning for that, and that's because the Gyrons and the Demo Gyrons really don't get along, and the only way to have unity between the two was to make sure that they're always wearing, essentially, masks, so you can't see their eyes, because that's the only way to tell them apart. But because they can't emote through the fucking mask, they emote using hand gestures. There's also another species that I have in there that is completely non-communicative. If you watch its movements, you just get an impression of what it's trying to convey. And the fun part is that the main character is able to actually decipher fairly readily. And later meets another species that a lot of their communication is nonverbal, and she's able to interpret for them too. And adopts them as if they were her own kids. Kind of fun. Big fucking teddy bear looking reptile things, scales and fur, and yeah. Freaking Gigaltum. There is an anti-hominid that doesn't show up much. They can't live on most planets.
Mild hostility. What are you doing on this wing of the Citadel? Fucking Elcor, man. I love him.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Well, once again, just for reference, the link is out there. Feel free to join if you'd like. Yada yada yada. I don't know. I mean, we're not getting much for folks in here today. It's not the greatest day to be running this kind of stuff. And no, actually, it's been oh holy crap! It's been 4 fucking hours already. Why am I still in here?
Where Odysseus is hiding under the sheep, claiming to be nobody, and the blinded Cyclops is trying to find him and feeling the sheep. But Odysseus is a Cheshire.
Oh, the Cheshire would try to pull out the lens of his one great eye and play with it. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't be hiding for long. Eye shiny. Gimme. Ew.
These sheep are so soft.
Weird ass little fuckers. Goddamn. Yeah, Cheshire are a trip. I actually do have one that shows up in the 3rd book. And of course, there is a joke about, are you sure it's safe to send her out to get that? It might be a little too shiny for her. Oh, no, she's well trained. She'll be fine.
You can't train a cat.
She's still a little late getting back, but she does return with the armor. But yeah, it's, I don't know, I have fun with a lot. Actually, that whole sequence of the armor shop was kind of fun.
I told you about my character Chester sneaking into the fortress, right?
No.
Okay, so Chester was a catfolk in D&D based entirely on your Cheshire race, because it's fun to play. It's really good. One second, I gotta deal with the dog.
Well, I'm waiting a moment on that. One of the gags in Corellis, one of many, is that the Cheshire have never been conquered. Now, this doesn't mean that they've never had some alien race come down there and subjugate them or something like this. The Cheshire just never realized that they'd been conquered. As far as they consider, oh, look, we have guests. Isn't this nice? They're too flighty and flaky. That and you can't get them to do much anything you want anyway, so they're kind of useless to most other species that would try to subjugate them. But that's the thing, is a lot of the stuff that's kind of worked into the narrative is intended to be more humor than serious.
Alright, so we're in this party, and we got to sneak into this fortress to get something, right? And there's the we're in the tree line, and there's 2 guards up front. One of them very obviously higher ranking than the other one. And then there's the obvious window entrance on the side that we can sneak around to and climb in, no problem. But the higher ranking guard has a sword with a ruby on the bottom of the hilt.
Oh no! And
it's shiny. So while the party is getting ready to move towards the obvious we can sneak in here entrance, Chester goes running up and says, "Hi, can I see your sword?" And the guard...
Wait, see, it's shiny. It's also shiny. Just for a minute, I promise I'll give it back. It's shiny. I like it shiny. Sorry.
Yeah. So the guards who were talking with each other stop and look at him, and the higher ranking guy is like, "What are you doing here, kid? You can't be around here." And it's like, "Hi, I'm Chester. Can I see your sword?" "No, you can't see my sword. Get out of here." "Come on, I want to see it. I like the gem. The gem is shiny. Can I see it?" And he pushes my shoulder and says, "Get out of here, kid." At which time, me being a rogue, pull out my rapier, spin around, hit him in the neck, crit him, kill him in one shot, take a sword, and start polishing the gem with my fur on my forearm. And the other guard is just in shock because his commanding officer just got one shot because of a natural 20. And is just sitting there looking at me as I'm polishing the gem on the bottom of the hilt and looking at it. And the other guard is just like shaking voice, like, "What are you?" And I look up at him. He's like, "Hi, I'm Chester." And the guy's like, "Hi." It's like, "Where'd you get that helmet?" He's like, "Oh, you want it? You can have the helmet. You want the helmet?" Like, "No, that helmet's ugly. I got a better one. I got 2 better ones. Do you want a better one? I got a better one." Okay. And I take out another helmet I had, and I give it to him, and I go back to polishing the sword. And he's like, "What are you... Why are you here?" Okay. And I look at him, and I pull the sword to my chest, and go, "No, you can't have it. It's mine. It's my shiny." And he's like, "I don't want it." And I'm like, "No, you can't have it." And I'm backing away slowly, looking at him with the evil eyes. I back straight into the fortress that he's guarding, and just go on into the fucking hallway. And then he drops down to his drops down and sits down and puts his hand in his face, like, "Oh, what the fuck do I do now?" The rest of the party, they sneak in through the side entrance. And they meet up with me about 10 minutes later. And one of the party members is like, "Hey, Chester, buddy, how you doing?" He's like, "Hi, it's dark in here and it smells funny." He's like, "Oh, well, what happened to your sword?" I'm like, "What sword?" The new sword you got." What are you talking about? See, what happened is this facility has rats, and the sword got dropped when I went chasing one.
Yeah, playing a Cheshire, indeed. Indeed.
It was so much fun.
That was the thing is, I had a friend that got so upset that the only felinoid race that I had were these flighty, obnoxious critters, essentially. And he fought for ages trying to get me to put in something more like a jungle cat, something respectable. And I'm like, no, I don't think so, dude. At the time he was playing, what was it, Starflight or something like that? What was it? No, Wing Commander. He was playing Wing Commander while reading Larry Niven novels. The Man-Kazin Wars. And I'm like, no, dude, no, somebody else already has that shit covered. I'm not adding that crap into my fucking world. And he pushed, and I'm playing like, fine, just shut the hell up. And thus the Karzan were created. On a lot of levels, not that original. It's just kind of like with Dayreth. I had a bunch of people pushing me to add some things equivalent to Drow in there. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, no. And eventually I relented, and we ended up with the Dayreth.
Yeah, it was funny when we were introducing when our characters were introducing themselves to each other. It was like, "Hi, I'm Chester. My name was supposed to be Chester, but they spelled it wrong when they registered me at the orphanage, so they wrote it down as Chester, and so they've always called me Chester since then." And when I played, we played Search and Destroy. That was my favorite game in the orphanage. I used to love it. I was so good at hiding. Once I hid for 13 days, and they never found me. See, no one was actually looking for him because he's so fucking annoying.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing is though that it always surprised me how few people would find out about them and then immediately want to like embrace them. And I only ran into one, and he was fucking hilarious. Yeah. He actually there was this one scene with him that was fun because they're sitting there and there's this combat situation, and you know how I run the game, so I'm going around the room, react, and I get to the guy playing the Cheshire, and he's like, "Damn it, my fur's out of place. I got a groom."
Yep.
And everyone else is like, "Are you going to get up and do something?" He's like, "I'm not done yet."
Yep.
And he's making those noises of, guys, everyone's like, "Just stop!" And they're like, "We're going, by the end of the game, we're going to kill the Cheshire."
Yep.
They didn't, but yeah, because they were actually, it's like they're responding to this, but at the same point, internally, they're having a fucking blast with his antics.
Well, that's like they asked me about they asked Chester rather about something later on. This was after the introductions, obviously, and before the fortress, where they had asked me about something that I had said previously. And you can tell his attitude when he's talking. He just talks and gives everything. But they asked him about something, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember the response was, "How do you know about that? You told us about that?" "No, I didn't. I wouldn't tell you about that. That's a secret. That's one of my secrets. I don't tell people secrets. I don't tell people much of anything. I don't talk much at all. I'm a real quiet guy." At which point, one of the other guys goes, "Are you for real?" At which point, I respond,
"What are you talking about? I'm really furry. My fur is real." Sorry.
Pretty damn close. I respond with, "For real? Yes, of course my fur is real. It's nice and clean, nice and soft, nice and clean." Ugh, hairball.
Should have expected that one. Yeah. I don't know. I've always had a weird fondness for the Cheshire, but I find that so few people can even pull it off. There's one other race that's similar. Is they just take things just weirdly literally and don't necessarily get the connection between terms, and they're called Forbo. And the only way the way that the Forbo was unlocked as a race was that, as I told you, players are essentially unlocking races for themselves based upon what they do over the course of the time they're playing the game. And this guy had been to Midgard. He had come across a Forbo there, and since he'd come across and interacted with him there, he essentially unlocked his ability to play the race. So in a later game, he decided to play a Forbo. And at one point, they send him in this warehouse to try to get intel because, he's really sneaky and he's short and all this other stuff. And he comes back, and I, of course, I take him aside and let him know what's going on, and he has to hear the discussion that he overhears. And he comes back and starts talking about how it's obviously a warehouse full of mannequins because they were talking about arms.
Yep.
Arms deals, so clearly they're making mannequins. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so I've run into that kind of crap. I should probably take this offline. Good God, I've been on way too long, and we're still at like 4 fucking viewers. We have been for a bit of a while. Hang on, is anybody still listening out there? Or You all like wandered off to other things and fallen asleep or whatever the fuck. I don't know.
I think Cybo was listening while he was walking.
Psychopath. Yeah, that's kind of fun actually. I can't really make it out from here. What the hell is that icon of? Is that a bird or an alien or? I can't really tell. Nope. Dogs barking.
Psychopath, yeah. That would be a crow.
There you go. Figure out what these two idiots are up to now.
Yeah, Blackbeak gets a raven. No, this crow's a Blackbeak. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't see anything. Don't hear anything. It's a little warm back here. I'm gonna have to turn that off probably. Nah, fuck it. Let it keep mining. No. No sign of a kiddo. I don't know what the hell their deal is. Neighbor's dogs must have been whining or something. I don't know. They're freaked the fuck out though for no fucking reason as usual. Who the fuck knows? They're dogs. Actually, is that thing still mining? I don't see it scrolling by. It might have frozen up on me. Huh. No, it's... let's see now. Yeah, that was a while ago. It locked up, I think. Let's reboot that fucker. There we go. That should force restart the mining software. There we go, and it's trying to do something now. Yay. I don't know, maybe I lost my connection to it. It was easy enough to restart, though, but yeah, yeah, it doesn't look like anyone's been by the back fence or anything. It's not like there's more than one door to it. I don't know. Dog's just freaking the fuck out. Anyway, I probably should actually get going. Let's see now. Well, not seeing anything in the external. We sold the same number of viewers. Fuck it, let's take this bitch offline.
Morose rumination, to be or not to be, that is the question.
Whether 'tis nobler in